Welcome to episode 98 of the Coast to Coast Safer podcast, Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this one, round two has come and gone. It's a very interesting round. Only a short amount of games because the bye rounds carrying over from opening round have arrived. But there were definitely some very interesting ones coming through this week. Definitely a win or two that we weren't really expecting. But we will touch on all of that. But first of all, how are you doing, Mr. Cyrus?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. After a bit more adventurous weekends, I had a very quiet one. Unlike you, a bit polar opposite. But yeah, so I took a bit of time, watched a bit of footy, had a good one. Uh, but yeah, also very happy to see Port get on the board. I'll be against an Essendon side that are really struggling. We'll talk about that a bit later. But yeah, as I said, it's just good to have a bit of optimism. And as I said, I feel like, and the tips probably reflect this, the longer we've gone into this or round two, I probably know less about football than I did when the season started. So that's fun to talk about when we get to it. But
Yeah,
yeah, in general, otherwise had a pretty good week.
yeah. I'm kind of feeling the same way about football. Things haven't exactly planned out the way we kind of expected to start this season. Some teams are at the top that we didn't think would be early on. Some teams are at the bottom that we didn't think would be early on. So it's
Mm.
very interesting to see where everything is lined up at the moment. But yes, you are correct. I was very busy this weekend. I ended up going up to Sydney. That was a fun little trip, but I'm glad to be back. It was a little 24-hour adventure. You know me, I tend to do those every now and then. Um, but yes, I'm back. Hopefully, I'll be able to actually watch some more footy. But with Easter coming up, I'm going to be flat out at work, so maybe that's not going to happen. But we shall see. Um, shall we just jump straight into our first game of the round?
Yeah, because this was a very interesting one. We go to the MCG where we get two relatively informed teams, one undefeated, one and one, but both showing good signs. It's Hawthorn versus Sydney.
That's right. At the MCG with a 17-point margin. I tipped the margin on this one. Feels great. 17 is a really arbitrary number to always pick, but sometimes it's correct, and I'm glad I go with 17. So yes, with a 17-point margin, Hawthorn won out 14-15-99 to 13-4-82.
Yeah, and well, first of all, I want to say about the margin. I tend to be like that. I hate tipping exact goal
Yeah,
margins, and yet
exact
there's
goal
no
margins don't
reason
make sense to
why.
me because there's so much
Yeah,
drama.
I know, but like technically, like you could have the same amount of behinds. Like it doesn't mean that you have to kick the same amount of goals literally. But in your mind, you're just like, oh, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, very
But
true, very
anyway,
true. That's kind of the
um,
way that I look at it. Yeah.
yeah, it's just weird. But in terms of this game, I would say it was weird, but ultimately fun. I think this is probably the best Thursday night game we've had, considering the other two were terrible.
Yep, you'd be
Yeah,
correct in that
because it
regard.
was Essendon, Carlton, Sydney, Carlton. Sorry, someone
Richmond,
Hawthorn,
Carlton,
Essendon.
Richmond, Carlton, and
Oh, Richmond, Carlton. That's it.
and Sydney. Yeah, and Sydney, Carlton round zero.
Yeah. So it turns out not playing Carlton tends to make football more enjoyable. Who would have thought?
Who'd have thunk it?
Um, but yeah, there was actually signs of this game like could have been outright terrible. Some interesting umpiring decisions and a mass amount of turnovers with some pretty mediocre ball movement. The caveat to that is just it was a huge pressure game. Both teams were sort of tackling the lights out. A lot of pressure on the ball users. However, some good swinging performances and some late clutch moments by Nick Watson and a few others. Hawthorn put a tight Sydney to bed. Obviously, a lot was made about the short break. Sydney only having 4 days. Oh, sorry, 5 days compared to six,
Yep.
which is always a bit harsh. And obviously the injuries to Errol Goulden and Azakini. But yeah, it's very hard to judge Sydney's performance because it was like they were good at converting the opportunities they had, but yeah, systematically they were a bit, you know, lacking a turn a bit.
Yeah, it's
Um,
they were very much missing like that extra dash that they normally get out of Goulden. So like when he kind of like had to go off for a bit because like there was definitely something wrong during the game. I think he tried to play it out but just couldn't.
No, Gordon. That was
Oh, it was
last week.
last week? Oh no,
Gordon's
that was last week.
yeah, that he was fully out this week.
I am out of it. Yeah, no, like
It's all
sorry.
good.
In that case, yeah, like they were very much missing like his kind of dash that they normally rely on that wing, and that really makes like so much of a difference. And it's sad
Mm.
because the matchup that we were hoping we were going to get, as we talked about like last week or the week before, we didn't get because he's injured.
Yeah, Massimo D'Ambrosio. He had, just an okay game, but like looked a bit more, um, or maybe clinical. I said it makes a big difference because we're talking about like Gordon. You take him out of the equation. We're talking about a Jake Lloyd and a what's his name, Jai Sarong
Yes,
based wing,
yeah, that's
which
right.
is interesting
It's not as
to say
exciting.
the least. No, you wouldn't be picking those two players if you were like building a wing lineup from scratch. But I will say like where this did because they were set up like for a few good stoppage plays and all that. Grundy had an absolutely beastly performance. He could legitimately be best on ground, despite being the comfortably losing team. But it was the inside 50s after the first quarter. They were absolutely terrible. I do want to give a shout out to Emmeline Brees,
Yes.
also known as Coach Du Bois. She does some fantastic visualization work, and one of the new projects she has is an inside 50 visualizer. And I was able to see that Sydney, for 2 quarters, they only had 2 effective inside 50s each. So they were really just bombing it into Kerno. Amadi really wasn't a forward factor. Their traditional forward, like we said, that they might struggle to get into near the start of the year. Like this was pretty much worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And McDonald was there; he was presenting enough. But at the end of the day, Swans only got 4 marks inside 50 for the entire night. So 13-4, while it was good conversion, there wasn't really enough from conventional shots. This was just like Sydney making the most of it. They were keeping up. And they could have won. Like there was, the contentious decision with I think it was the holding the ball late, where I think it was Ginnivan got away with one, and then one of the small boys for Sydney got pinged
Oh
only
yeah.
seconds later. So as I said, it's a bit there, but like to me, I think Sydney, Hawthorn just had the better, um, maybe not execution because again they were pretty wasteful, but they had the better system for the night. I think Newcomb and Nash used Sissini less midfield to lift a
Mm-hmm.
bit. Moore was really effective forward of the ball, and Gunners was fighting so much of the ball inside 50, both on ground in the air. His form is still there. Kicked for 4, so a bit of a mixed bag for him. Accuracy wise,
Mm-hmm.
but still playing up to his best. Decent tackling pressure by both teams means that sort of the ball use is a bit excused. But there's no doubt the bad kicking kept Swannies, a bit closer than they probably could have been.
Yep.
But it was also sort of breaking down their forward line entries all the same. Like Sydney just looked a bit panicked going inside 50 at times, and you take out couple of your best ball users, and you can sort of see why this would happen. And I don't think like it's going to be a match where we need to reassess completely where Sydney's at.
Yeah.
But I guess it was just a tiny bit of a depth test, and they fell short of that a little ways, I would say.
Yeah.
Corey Warner comes in, Clayton's Cleary comes in, and they both just don't have an impact really.
Yeah, that's one way to definitely look at it. And it's like, it's probably a good thing to test your depth earlier in a season, but you don't
Mm,
also really want to test your depth against a tough opponent.
yeah.
You want to be able to actually play your best team against your tougher opponents and then use the ones that are kind of, around your level or below to, introduce more depth and, really test it and make
Mm,
sure that like they're going to develop into the players that you want them to. Um, but like in terms of the players that were out there for Sydney, they definitely had some pretty solid highlight players. Again, I think
Mm.
Sheldrick is really coming into his own as a solid midfielder.
Yep.
Just for an example, I'm blanking other people on like other people in that midfield right now, but I think he was a very big standout in round zero. And I thought
Mm.
he had a really good game as well in round one.
Yeah,
So
solid
it's
enough
good to see that
game
like
this week.
that's still very much continuing. I think he's going to be one of
Yeah.
their kind of bigger midfield players going into later in the season.
And it's not like Rowbottom or McInerney really let them down. Chadwick had an interesting game where some of the things he did look so clinical, and then he would just stuff up a simple shame. But again, a lot of players were stuffing up, so I'll give him a slight pass for that. But yeah, like I said, I don't think like systematically like the Swans were completely out of it. As I said, it was just it was just a forward half play really. Because as I said, I think both teams had a lot of turnovers in their back half,
Mm-hmm.
or as in like, it's just that Hawthorns were going into scoring shots a lot better rate than Sydney. Part of that for Hawthorn, and we're going to talk about it, was that big back line. They matched up so well against the Tolls. As I said, only Logan McDonald, who had to run up a fair bit, got a bit off the chain. And it was centered around, arguably, I would say, the best performer on the ground, Tom Barrass.
I'm actually kind of not surprised that Toparas had probably one of the best nights in this game. Like that back line has looked so solid the past like pretty much
Mm,
since the start of this season. And the fact that like he's kind of been leading from the front a little bit more, rather than like Sicily
mm.
usually taking a lot of that brunt work, has been really really good. I think I think the fact that he's like become an All Australian, I think has kind of like really shone a light on like how talented he is, and the fact that he's now in a backline that is basically finals contenders. Um, like these sorts of games where they're up against opponents that are kind of either at their level or like even just like slightly below really shows their the quality of what am I kind of looking for, like the quality of um talent that's kind of like
Yeah.
living in their backline.
Yeah, and as I said, it's like a system that supports each other because it's not like he had that many intercept marks. Like he only had three for the night.
Yeah, but he
But
didn't
it
need
was
to
just
rack them up like massively. He was able to
no.
just be, being impactful at contests. I believe every time he even got into a one on one, which wasn't that often, like he was still able to have an impact if he couldn't win the ball outright. Like he's
Mm.
done so much already that's made such a huge difference for this Hawthorn squad.
Yeah, like as I said, it was the spoiling, it was getting a few ground ball gets that really helped, and as I said, just keeping up the pressure. Like as I said, arguably one of the most threatening pure full forwards in Charlie Curnow.
Mm.
He kicks two straight away. He was starting on battle. Then they make a switch, and he's pretty much muted for the entire night. And as I said, it sort of ended up well because I think Battle actually preferred the switch up to the Amati. As I said, yeah. Unfortunately, it was just one of those things where yeah, it's that swing of Sydney's forward line that really hurt because, as I said, you say how it was good a matchup, but when your second forward isn't threatening, like it allows that change to happen.
Yeah, exactly right.
Like if Amadi was able to present a bit more, like you would have second thoughts of like, oh, we've gone out of form four, but like our defender, like, is switching him actually going to help? Especially since Amadi is so threatening on the run.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, like Battle is a really good player, but he's not going to match up with speed on Amadi. That's why he didn't start on him. But when Amadi's so quiet, like that point doesn't matter. And I think that's sort of one thing that's just a bit of a shame. And I do think that like changes if they had a bit of better forward entry, got a tiny bit more of the players that were going inside 50. But yeah, as I said, it's just a bit of a shame because there were opportunities for someone like Amadi. He did drop a few, and he'll be a bit disappointed with that effort.
Yeah, it's gonna be just really interesting the fact that the Sydney forward line is like really, really kind of struggling to stay. I won't say stay consistent because a lot of their game plan does actually just rely on Kerno.
Hmm.
Um, but like it's just interesting to see that the rest of the forward line really does kind of just go missing a lot of the time. And like this has always been an Amadi issue
Yeah,
because he's done it basically his entire career. Like we know
yeah,
he is very capable of getting into games, but he
mm,
gets shut out really easily. And I don't know how
yeah,
you change that up to add. Well, I mean, I guess like you maybe have a little bit more reliance on the ground level at the same time using Papley, but Papley, being
yeah,
in and out with injury at the moment, like doesn't really bode that well either. So
mm.
it's very interesting. Like, how do you make this amalgamation of a forward line kind of work?
Yeah, because as I said, it's not like they're the best ground level team either. Like they don't generate that many general play scores, and the ones that do are generally from fielders running in from the 50, maybe from the stoppages, goes on the ground, they're able to dish out.
Yeah, and that's
But really, you don't see many plays from Sydney that are like McDonald or Papley bring it up. Sorry, Papley. Amadi bring it to down, and Papley skips up like they did in 2024 really was the last year that they were able to consistently do it. So, yeah, as I said, it's just a thing that's fallen out of favor for Sydney, and you'd like to see a bit more of that because, as I said, they're good, but they're not balanced.
yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Jumping over on the MRO side of things, Angus Sheldrick was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire, and Tom McCartan was fined $1,000 for staging. And that
That's an interesting
it was
one
an
because
interesting
I
one.
don't.
I did see
You
the clip of
did you
it.
see it?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did. I mean,
it
he
wasn't
did kind of. It was
that.
kind of a flop. But it's.
I mean, it was flop-ish, but like I've seen a lot worse than that. Like at least
Oh
you
yeah,
could
so have
say,
I.
okay, there was enough contact to where like natural momentum means you're probably, at least stumbling a bit. Like
Yeah,
obviously, I think going fully to ground was the staging bit, but like it's like you're gonna pull that one out, like out of everything. It was like okay,
yeah.
yeah,
It
I don't
was
know,
definitely a choice, but oh well. They made their bed. They had to lay in it. Um.
yeah.
All right, let's jump over now to our next game where we change states for a Friday night clash.
Yes, Adelaide and the Bulldogs. And geez, players, if you want to have a good football match in 2026, the first team you are probably picking is the Western Bulldogs. And
Absolutely.
as impressive as this match is, and you can probably tell by the scoreline, which I'll let you go through in a sec, it wasn't exactly the Bulldogs game to a T, but this was a very, very, I would say, mature win from a team that is mature. Like it's not like a young team
Yeah, yeah,
developing,
yeah.
but in terms of depth, in terms of how they were forced to play by Adelaide, the Bulldogs did themselves a real solid by playing this way because, as I said, a one-dimensional team takes on one of the more different play styles you can play, probably one where you would argue is a deficit to the Dogs. Away from home,
Mm-hmm.
they come up with a win.
Yeah, no, like I'll scroll down to the timeline just so the YouTube audience can see like just kind of how this match played out, but like the final score does not tell the whole story in the slightest. But with a 6 point margin, the Bulldogs did win out against the Adelaide Crows at Adelaide Oval 14-10-94 to 13-10-88.
Yeah, and you might be wondering, oh, what are you on about in terms of, it wasn't quite the Bulldogs game. The Bulldogs recorded what I think that they said was their lowest score in, oh, it's a very long time. They only scored 2-4 from stoppage. Normally, the Bulldogs are absolutely dominant from that area. But, Adelaide did do their measures to try and mitigate that. And, like, credit to them. Absolutely fantastic job by the Crows midfield to be defensively responsible. You've got Mac Andrews, sorry, not Mac Andrews, McAndrew,
Yes.
coming up against Big Tim English. And he was still a raw ruckman, but like he didn't let English purely just feed tap after tap to the midfield. I think they did a really good job at, as I said, yeah, the Bulldogs won clearances, but Adelaide sort of prevented those clearances from being damaging.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, from early on, the Bulldogs, they were just, they were letting Adelaide play their game. They were like, okay, Adelaide, you want to play this way? And what Adelaide were playing, I should say, was a very back half chipping game. They were playing as slow as they could, to the ire of the commentary. We'll talk about it a bit late. But, they were like, okay, you can chip up. We're going to do some defensive running. Wee, sign of growth alert. Western Bulldogs doing defensive running and accountability. And they get turnovers. 78 points off turnovers. So, as I said, and the Crows, they were defending well. Their tolls were killing it. Murray, Butts, and Worrell, absolutely fantastic. Defensively, but as I mentioned, I think it was just their bowl youth in their back half, like really opened up the smalls and the pressure from the Bulldogs. We know their forward half pressure is also good.
Yeah.
Like that's never been put into account. But I think the pressure up the ground were creating more of those sort of turnovers because they were forced to do chick kick, and wait for their options. They didn't have any easy outs, which they were searching for. They just couldn't find. So, as I said, I think the Bulldogs did a really good job there. Obviously, as you said by the scoreline, it couldn't last the entire game. The Bulldogs just don't have the personnel for it. And Adelaide, once they got their movement, as I said, they were waiting. And then when they got it, you saw how efficient they were. They got in their forward line, obviously got a few defensive matchups, scored goals, some terrific goals late. But yeah, as I said, just clutched by the Bulldogs to late. Oscar Baker being one of the most out of nowhere match winners and probably one of the more weirder form players of the start of the season.
Yeah.
Gets them on top.
Yeah, it's really interesting that like out of this list, he is definitely not a player that you would pick to be able to kind of stand up in clutch moments. And the fact that he was able to get the ball on the outside and still kick it on the outside, like is obviously not just a statement in terms of what he's capable of as a player, but it's a statement of the fact that like the Dogs were really just doing absolutely anything that they could to try and get that win out. Like it was that much of a clutch moment that it kind of defined most of what this game like kind of entailed.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at the players like Joel Freer. He was absolutely fantastic. Like as I said, the Crows were doing like a lot of good inside and outside efforts, but you could tell that Freer was just trying to almost outrun some of the pressure. He just got possessions in spaces which were still contested enough. I don't think Adelaide did a bad job of like letting him get too off the chain, but like sometimes when you're putting so much attention to the inside midfield, like the best players then find out good outside places to be. And we saw that with Freer, we saw that with Bailey Williams. And I'm just really impressed because, again, on paper, that's not a strength of the Dogs. Like, I can't really blame Adelaide for taking this, what was last year, fairly tried and true method of beating the Dogs. And, like, it almost sort of worked. Like, again, it was only a 6-point margin. And you could argue Adelaide kicked themselves a tiny bit out of it. But as I said, I think there was an inkling to where at least we're seeing from the Dogs, we're not just going to be a team that's like, you can just, if you're skilled enough or like do a certain thing, we're just going to get, rolled over.
Yeah.
Like this is the Bulldogs saying, no, we're going to evolve our style of play where we can get these sort of wins and, really, really tough schedule, 3-0. Absolutely fantastic.
Honestly, it's like it's very interesting the fact that like even the Dogs defense, even though like we can praise their midfield and their forward line so much, like they are fantastic, and we did that a lot in the off season as well. But like the fact that their defense held up really well, like the fact that they really took it to to Keys, to Thilthorpe, I can't
Hmm.
remember if Tex was playing, but if Tex was out there, you can count him as well.
I'll text out a few moments.
Saligo really got tested as well as he was floating between midfield and the forward line. Like
Hmm.
there was so much going on, and the Dogs' defense, for how much we've kind of judged how inexperienced it is, really stood up
Hmm.
against such a tough lineup.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, like, again, they don't have to be perfect. Like, um, they just have to stop enough. And I think for most of the night, they did stop enough. Again, James O'Donnell is not a defensive masterclass on tech, struggled a tiny bit. But again, kept Tex to moments. Experience like that, player like that's going to have a few. Jacques, again, sort of played a more up the ground, but still defensive role. Absolutely fantastic. Buku Karmas is another player that's like, I always sort of put him towards a bit too aggressive at times with his defense. Like, yeah, it's good having an intercept defender, but I just don't think the Dogs have enough structure to allow him to play as loose. He's sort of tightened up a bit. It's become a bit more defensively responsible, and as it still makes a few errors here and there, but like, now the Dogs are preventing a few more of those from getting into scores. And honestly, if you're going to talk about defenses that allowed score from errors of their own, like again, Adelaide's defense on paper defensively was strong, but they're bowl youths. Like I get Jordan Butts had a really good game. He got like 8 intercept marks, 6 of them I think was early,
Mm-hmm.
but he also turned the ball over, which led to some easy Bulldogs goals. I think he coughed up probably about 2 or 3 by his foot.
Yeah, that
So,
did it
um,
did feel a little uncharacteristic to have like turnovers that were quite they were a lot more impactful than what they normally would have been against like in this sort of backline.
yeah. And as I said, it's a credit to the Bulldogs' pressure. They're obviously a great forward half defensive team.
Oh yeah.
But I do think that again, like some of the more pressure up the field, like I think Adelaide would have been going into this game thinking that they would get a few more aggressive up the ground movements. And as I said, we saw that late. Like that did happen. It's just the Bulldogs prevented that for so long. They were able to outlast a team that was doing everything in their powers and arguably successfully mitigating some of their strengths. Like I said, the media said, "Oh, Adelaide went too slow," and I just think that's nonsense. Like again, you've got a team that as I said, only lost by 6, probably kicked themselves out of it. Like it was more of an execution error.
Yeah.
As I said, like the Bulldogs did a really good job of just making sure that they stayed ahead of the curve enough.
Yeah.
And that's the Bulldogs. They stay ahead of the curve. Like they're not playing perfect football, but they definitely deserve to be in contention for the team playing the best at the moment.
Yeah, well, and unless you unless you want to put focus on the Suns, who are also having a fantastic start to
Mm,
the season, like I generally think the Dogs are probably the best team in the comp just as of right now. And
yeah.
yeah, and because it's so early, that's fine that they're not playing clean, perfect football, but they're
Mm,
winning and they're winning convincingly, and they're winning also semi unconventionally as well. Because some of the players that you wouldn't really kind of talk about in
yeah.
terms of being like the match winners, are winning the matches for them. Again, Oscar Baker has had a
Mm,
fantastic 2 weeks. We've got Joel Freer who had a fantastic game Friday night.
yeah.
Riley West is still
Lachlan
standing out
Bramble.
massively. Brambles had a fantastic
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, no, as I said, it is really a lot more even than we're used to seeing from this Bulldog side. And as I said, the back half movement is just night and day in terms of cleanliness.
Mm.
There's just, I know they did cough up a tiny bit. It's like not like they didn't, I think the intercept, it was sort of like the night before. Yeah, it was 68 intercepts from the Bulldogs, 74 by Adelaide. A lot of Adelaide's were fairly deep
Yeah.
again. But you know what I mean? It's like, um, you know, the Western Bulldogs, I think, are just a team where if you can get the ball to ground, they're always going to be a team you back in. And I think, the fact that this was such an aerially dominated night and they still managed to win is going to do supreme things for their confidence.
Oh, absolutely. However, what is not going to do much for the confidence of these teams is the injuries that they have sustained. Two notable players. Obviously, recruit coming over from Brisbane, Callum Archie, did an injury to his right hamstring. He will be out for about 6 weeks at minimum. And Tom
Hmm.
Liberatore, post game, was confirmed to have done a hamstring injury as well. I don't think the full timeline on his has been confirmed as of yet, but he
No.
will miss a little bit of footy, which is really unfortunate because he, knowing Libba, like he was going to come into having like a absolute monstrous game in the next couple of weeks, just with the way that he
Yeah,
plays.
like it's weird. Like he was pretty solid without being absolutely outstanding. And then you look at his stats and you're like, yeah, like he's just so much grunt.
Hmm.
I think it's just Bob Chappelli, like, is having such a supreme run of form where like Libba just doing standard really good things is sort of going into the shadows. But yeah, it's
Pretty
a bit of a
much.
shame. And obviously for Adelaide, losing the outside movement of Calamachi hurts a tiny bit. He hasn't really got firing this season, but so that takes some time. So a bit of a shame there.
Yeah. On the MRO side of things, Jake Saligo was fined $1,000 for other misconduct, which in terms of what the report actually says is a knee in the back against Oscar Baker, and that is it in terms of that game. Is there anything you want to quickly note before we move on?
Nah, I think I've glazed the Bulldogs enough. But again, I
I mean,
also
I
think that
would glaze the
Adelaide,
Bulldogs plenty. They are playing fantastic footy.
yeah, as I said, I don't really take much away from Adelaide, who again they've still had a pretty tough start to the season in terms of scheduling. Uh, as I said, I don't think they'll lose too much sleep coming into this game, but I think that they'll also be like, oh well, as I said, I think sometimes like good teams they lose a close contact like this, and then they get more what do you call it, more I guess motivation to expand their kit bag. So we'll see if Adelaide's able to do that next time they face the Bulldogs, which at this rate might happen in finals.
Yeah. I don't think these two teams face up against each other anymore for the rest of the season. So finals could genuinely be where they realign, which would be
Yeah,
like a who knows kind of
yeah,
situation right
interesting.
now.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump back over to the MCG, where Richmond got their first home game of the season. Unfortunately, it was up against the Gold Coast Suns, which does was not going to bode well this year.
Hmm.
Unlike last year, where they managed to get the jump on them and managed to sneak out a win. But with a 68-point margin, the Suns won out 19-14, 128 to 9-6, 60.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is probably like the least fun game of football for the weekend. Pretty dismal affair, pretty straightforward after halftime. Richmond started off early, like they put decent pressure, maintained a bit of a lead going into quarter time, I think. But yeah, as I said, it really the loss of Lynch sort of stopped any chances of their slim forward line entries being converted into competing score.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, did give Lynch a knock last week for some of his leadership thing, but as I said, he still does provide a lot of structure. There's no doubt about that. And you sort of see how that sort of dips when he goes off the field, which is a bit of bit sad. But despite a shock loss in clearances, the Suns, 2 weeks in a row, they've lost clearances to West Coast and Richmond. But it's not really a big deal because they just set up their back line to let Andrews, Collins, Ballard, Hewland feast.
Yeah.
Uh, Richmond had patches of defendings, but Suns told absolutely dominated. I think Reed did a really good job of laying the groundwork. And, this goes back to what we were talking about, Amadi and Kerno, where Reed was having such a good job day that, they pay more attention to Reed. And then all of a sudden, Ben King has, I think it was 6 or 7 goals. He had an absolutely big day out.
It sounds like
Let's
Ben
see.
King
Yeah,
to just
7
suddenly have a monstrous game.
7-0. And honestly, absolutely fantastic shooting. Some of these were tough shots. Honestly, yeah, the Suns kicking was fairly good. Again, the Tigers were like sort of going to Brendo break defense. Because yeah, the tidal wave of offense just happened after halftime. But yeah, Gold Coast just kept on converting.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of other players for the Suns, Zeke had a really good impact for a few touches. Zeke Uland, obviously brother to Bodie.
Yep.
Powell, Davies rounded up the midfield, which was very important because, as you're going to mention, we got a bit of a big injury that might affect their mid to forward rotation. But yeah, so the last thing I really want to say in terms of like players and statistics, because again, this isn't a very interesting match, is like Richmond really needed to have better kicking from its veteran players. I was just having a look at it. Taranto had a fantastic game, 30% disposal efficiency by kicking. Hopper a bit less, Ross a bit more. Ross ended up with 40 for the night. There were some good efforts by Richmond. They sort of waned after a while, but there was just a massive class difference. And I think, as I said, you can have effort to a degree, but when you're a team that's young and struggling to win the ball, to give it your bowl, the limited bowl you have to your opponents is just a death sentence, and you're gonna get rolled over every time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And like there's a lot that we are missing. And
Mm,
I don't think it's necessarily like a personnel thing. I think it's more of like a skills kind of thing where we're just being
yeah.
outclassed in a lot of areas, which is really weird considering, that's the areas that we're really struggling with is kind of why we brought in players like Taranto and Hopper, and like we've elevated
Mm,
players like Jack Ross. Obviously, Lawler. And I think if Houghton wasn't out, I think Houghton would probably fill that role a little bit
mm,
more. But that's why we have these sorts of midfield players coming through the system. But it's like if you're kicking efficient, like if you can do fantastic work through traffic, great. But if you
yeah.
can't convert that into a decent inside 50 or even a score, like then there's so much more that's the issue. And like I
Yeah,
get that
exactly.
we don't really have much of a forward line, especially without Tom Lynch right now. Um,
Yeah.
but like we need to still try something, and that's I guess it's really hard with like our younger players because they need Tom Lynch's guidance at the moment because he's kind of the only veteran there, and without him on
Yeah, because
field,
it wasn't.
they're a bit
Hmm.
lost.
Because it wasn't like it was like purely dismal. I mean, like 15 scoring shots from 36 inside 50s. It's not perfect, but you'll like take it. Like a lot of teams can still win with like a 40% inside 50 to score
Yeah,
conversion. Um, but yeah, as I said, it's just when you yeah, have those limited moments, it's just about making the most of it. And it's like it was a shame because I said I only looked at a bit of it, mainly the first stuff, but like Jaden Short, he was like coming around hitting targets, starting a few chains. He got 730 meters gained with 13 marks, 23 possessions. 33 possessions, sorry. But yeah, they just didn't amount to much. As I said, it was a bit of a shame, really, because again, I don't think, again, it's like Richmond to a T. Like efforts aren't bad, execution uh is starting because as I said, like we excused this a couple of years ago, in Uze's first year.
there was also
We
the horror
understood
injury
it.
run year, so you can kind of
Yeah,
understand.
exactly. We understood it in the second year, but I think you got to start asking questions. Is like, well, is this starting to be a system thing? Are Richmond setting themselves up to produce good soaring chains? And the answer may be no.
Yeah,
It's hard to tell with such a young, mixed balanced team, but it's one that the coaching staff have to be aggressive to try and solve to prevent some of these performances.
agreed. And a part of that can also be just attributed to the fact that we are still very early in the season. Again, small sample sizes for a lot of these
Yeah,
teams early on. But there is a very possible chance that we are just not exactly setting ourselves up to have a stronger impact off of our half back line because Shorty Shorty's actually in pretty decent form at the moment. Like I'm very surprised that he's in really good form right now. But
mm,
like, and we had Vlosten back, which is always good to see. Always a big fan of Tigger, so I'm very glad that he was able to do his intercept kind of work that he always does. But the fact that like their efforts and the efforts of the rest of our backline that did stand up, that just weren't amounting to a lot in like further up the ground, is where we need to start kind of resolving some of the issues. Whether it's we try and get them through traffic or we just try and get them by playing on the wings. Like we just need to try and figure out what the
yeah.
right sort of balance is in terms of getting that conversion.
Mm. And like Richmond sort of have to do a bit of reverse engineering, especially, we're about to talk about the injuries, but like you have to say, well, because we don't have that forward line, we need to try and we have to find goals from other areas, and that's where I don't think Richmond's done quite as good a job. You've got some players like Seth Campbell, like he was probably the biggest example of a bit of a shining light there. I think he's done a really good job of taking a few moments. Like 3 goals too in this game is probably more output than you expect from him, but he is good at like finding those sneaky goals, whether on ground level,
He is,
whether
and
a bit more
he
outside
is very good at
clearance.
that, which is really good to see. But yeah,
But there's just not as many from other players. And I think that they maybe need to look at, changing their structures to look at more different avenues to go if they're just, because I said Tom Brown in this game, you know what I mean? Like he was just standing in the forward line, really, trying to be Tom Lynch.
well,
You know,
he's not
the
a forward, which doesn't help the situation.
Oh yeah, I
But
know. But you know what I mean? It's like that's what I'm saying. It's like, you know, again, it's like what do you expect when you put that,
yeah, exactly right,
it-
exactly right. And it's like I appreciate that we did recruit tall forwards. I appreciate that
hmm,
they are getting game time, even if it is just purely for the fact that there are injuries about, so they're
hmm,
kind of just getting thrown into the deep end. But yeah, with the injuries to Tom Lynch and Toby Nankervis as well, both hamstrings, and on the Sun side, I think
hmm.
it's Christian Petrarca being the big one with a hamstring injury as well. For us especially, it's going to be really hard to try and figure out who to put in those positions because honestly, as much as I love the man, I don't think Samson Ryan is going to be coming in to do
Right.
ruck duties, um,
Hmm,
or just in general. I think in terms of Lynch, we'll probably bring in players like, if they're not already in, like Jonty Fall, Tom Sims, or Liam
hmm.
Fawcett. They're our 3 younger talls that are in the
Yeah.
forward line. And in terms of Nang's position, we could probably Ollie Hayes Brown might finally get his debut. He's been doing some really really solid
Hmm.
work in terms of prepping to be a ruck. Um, or we might bring in like a Jasper Olga. I'm just trying to think of who else is tall that we actually have. Um, that's kind of really about it off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure Jasper Olga is tall. I could be wrong on that,
I'll
but
look at Footy Wire, but yeah.
but yeah, like there's if Smiley was ready, if Smiley wasn't injured, still
Yeah.
he would be a perfect fit because he's got Nank's build. He's basically Nank's like size, and he's still only
Hmm.
like 19, which is crazy. Um, but yeah, he's not ready yet, so he won't be able to come into that position. But yeah, so just trying to figure out who covers Nank is kind of the harder part rather than who covers Lynch. Um, and you
Yeah.
don't want to throw a
Does
player
that
like Bolter, who's finally settled back into defense, into that role
hmm.
either.
No, I think that would be a step back. And, as I said, it is hard to go undersized. And, like, the biggest downside to this is you're playing a team with pretty much 4 to 5 ruckmen,
Yeah.
depending on how you want to look at them in Fremantle next week. But yeah, just
At
finishing
that
off
point, they
on
may as
the
well just play
Southern.
all 5 Rockmen, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, Frio's had some problems with far more talent. So as
Oh
I said,
yes,
even if you
that's
have players
true.
on the park, sometimes it's still not as simple. But wrapping it all up, Bailey Humphries has a 2-match ban. He is going to challenge it, but I don't think personally he'll be successful for a rough conduct tackle against Morris Rioli. This was just your standard tackle, which had a bit of a backward slinging motion into the ground.
Yes, I did see this, and I completely agree that I don't think challenge. I think challenging it is pretty much a waste of time. I think the
Mm,
ban will stay. If it does get downgraded, if I don't think it'll get downgraded much, it might just get downgraded to a 1 match ban. Either
mm.
way, I don't see him playing next week at minimum. Um,
No, which is
yeah,
a bit of well, not a bit of a shame because he did it to himself, but he started off the year fairly hot and has now, had a bad game and did something like that. So, yeah, it's like a slight downside, to a pretty positive day.
yeah.
Well, as I said, also the Petrarca injury is like not great, but
Just bef-
honestly, just the way the Suns are playing, I don't think it matters
No,
that
I
much.
was gonna say, like, just before we move on, do we want to touch on like how that could affect them? But honestly, I don't think it would really affect them all that much right now.
Like, they've got Tuke Miller. Like, he plays the exact same thing. Like, yeah, sure, Tuke Miller probably has more on-ball impact when Petrarca goes forward. I know it's a bit weird. Like, most people think the other way, where Petrarca is actually now being played as more of a forward option that just sometimes rotates in the middle. But he's been playing fantastic. As I said, Alex Davies. Uh, uh, not, what's the other one? Will Powell.
Yes.
You know, they're rotating in the midfield still. Like, the good thing is the Suns are still being proactive about, rotating a few players in there. Like, they haven't put all the eggs. They've probably been playing more midfielders in this year than they did last year, which was a very tight knit Anderson, Rao, sometimes Miller, and obviously Witts as the main ruck. So yeah, as I said, I just don't see that. Like, the Suns were good last year without him. Uh, yeah, I don't think that's going to be as big an issue. It's just like,
No,
maybe
yeah.
they lose a close match sometime in the future because of it. Not really season defining. Just a
Yeah,
shame.
that's kind of the way that I'm kind of looking at it right now. But that will do us for this game. We're gonna jump up now to New South Wales, where the Giants hosted St Kilda, and with a 4 point margin, a lot of people did not expect this. St Kilda went out against the Giants, even though I guess in some cases it probably was kind of foreseen because we know the Giants are still going through their injury woes. But the scoreline generally does not tell the whole story of why this ended up being so close. So St Kilda did win out with a 4 point margin, 11-12-78 to 10-14-74. Thankfully, due to St Kilda kind of stopping in the fourth quarter and the Giants just going on an absolute goal blitz right at the very end.
Yeah, because like this had all the mark. Like, this was a woeful, woeful match. More so by the Giants. Like, I think St Kilda were just eh. Like, to be honest, this was the worst Saints performance, and they got their first win for the year, which I find a bit funny. But yeah, as you mentioned, like, the Giants had all but kicked themselves out of it. Like, absolutely woeful forward entrance,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely woeful forward presenting. I think they were on par with Sydney for like worst forward presenting for the talent they had on the field. And yet they almost eke out a win despite being 3 down with 5 minutes left. And it was really from them strong arming St Kilda. They just got the ball a bit more, send it forward, send it forward, send it forward. And if they had any semblance of forward structure, they would have gotten past them way beforehand. But like, at the end of the day, Hogan, Stringer absent for the most day. Riccardi and Brown almost didn't contribute anything at all. Leaving a young but trying Grzycki, who I think's had a pretty good start to 2026, all things considered. He pushed up, tried to have an impact, but yeah, there just wasn't much there. Wilkie did a fantastic job, sort of led from the back. Their ball use from Sinclair sort of started a few chains. But yeah, Saints were just very hit or miss with their ball movement. Saints also tried, a few different things. They tagged Callahan. Did really good. Wilson pushed forward, had great impact.
Mm-hmm.
And as we mentioned, the Saints look creative whilst having less entries. But yeah, their scoring was pretty mediocre as well. Again, back up movement, pretty their forward half players actually did really well. I think they did the heavy lifting for the game. I think Garcia also had a good one.
Agreed. He
As
did.
another
I
one.
know they threw Taru in the forward line a little bit
Yeah.
more in this game, and I
Oh,
thought he
that's
had a
right.
very
Yeah. Taru. Yeah, no, he actually presented quite well. It was a bit more in the first half, but like, again, when you're a team like St Kilda, and Taru only spent 50% time on ground as well.
yeah, correct.
Like, when St Kilda's a team where sometimes you just got to get goals in moments, doing a play like that, is to good effect. So, yeah, and as I said, like, the pressure by the forward half was pretty good. But yeah, as I said, it was just their back half and some of their ball using. And I do want to give I don't want to give like a shout out saying, "Oh, Tom de Koenig's overrated,"
It's
and
it's
like,
a it's
they
a
shouldn't
funny
pay him that
shout out.
much.
Let's be real. It's a really
But it
funny
is
decision.
sort of funny. So Tom De Koning, as a player rating, again, a score, that can be positive or negative. Generally, 10 is a fairly solid game. A mediocre player would be very happy with a 10. And a solid player would be like, oh, okay, I'll take it. Yeah, Tom De Koning got negative 10 in player rating. And that was mainly due to his negative 15.7 player ranking points coming from his bowl use. And getting a 19% disposal efficiency with 0% kicking efficiency and 9 clangers. Shout outs to Kieran Briggs. Obviously, he did a part in mitigating some of Tom De Koning's work, but yeah, not his finest game. I think he, maybe not, send the millions back, but, maybe,
Well,
I don't know.
you know what
Maybe
they say.
Maybe he needs to.
You can take the boy out of Carlton, but you can't take Carlton out of the boy.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I don't think it matters that much. Like, at the end of the day, it's like, Tom De Koning, I think he had, like, a bit of that. Sometimes he's a bit more adventurous than he is skillful at times. When he does pull it off, he can generate a lot. And I don't think they'll be asking De Koning to change much of his playstyle. It just didn't work out. And it should be said, like, this was a thunderstorm affected game as well. Like, it wasn't raining that much, but it was humid. The ball was greasy. Again, which is why, as I said, like, not many of the tall forwards got involved, but, as I said, in terms of, like, the impact and just being around the ball, yeah, as I said, there was just, like, a lot of Giants that, were in the forward half doing nothing, really. Jake Stringer, I think, as I said, it was just so Jake-like, and you sort of got to ask the question, is like, Jake Stringer was put into the team to polish off what was, a forward line that, just probably could have used a few more ground level goals.
Yeah.
This was a team that was, like, expected to make top 4, but this year, like, it's really a turning point. It's like, do you continue playing a player like Jake Stringer if Sydney are turning into a middling pack team? Because I think they should be, like, trying to find, because they've got a few players trying to bubble in. They'll bring in a player like I was going to say Cadman. No, the distributor that got injured last year.
Brent Daniels?
Daniels.
Yes.
Yeah. Because they'll bring in Brent Daniels eventually, and it's like, well, do you go towards, trying to get a bit better supply to those forwards? You've lost a bit of class in your midfield. Is it really that important having a ground level ball when, as I said, you have such a big supply? Like, I think it was like, what was it, inside 50 count? It was 62 to 53.
It wasn't.
So, you had enough balls.
That's still fairly close.
Oh, it is, but, like, as I said, 62 inside 50s for 10 goals is a bit.
That's that's not a
great.
Know
what I mean?
That's not a great number.
Like, I get it was harder for the Tolls to get involved, but, like, again, it's it was just one of those things where it's like, Stringer, I get you just, like, I don't expect Stringer to, like, have fantastic consistent games for the rest of his career. But do you have to start looking a bit towards the future? Because they are in other areas. There's no doubt about that. Do they have to look at it in their forward line? They're, trying players like putting Delana a bit forward.
Yes.
He hit a few targets, looked good at times. Not brilliantly, possession winning, but, does a few things. Ralston's done a few good things this year. That's another one, isn't there? Oh, Gothard. Yeah, he had 2 goals. Was absolutely fantastic for the young kid. So yeah, as I said, is it just something where we look to change things? I'm not specifically saying you need to ask that question. I think it's something that GWS need to ask themselves, because, yeah, as I said, their forward line efficiency is now dipping a lot. Because, yeah, as I said, that 3 forward prong isn't working, and adding Stringer, which is a variability, into the mix, that's 4 players you're saying are a core in your forward line.
Yeah.
That I just wouldn't trust week in, week out.
Yeah, I don't know if part of it is just the personnel issue in the forward line, or if maybe, like, they really are missing those key distribution players in the midfield that normally have more of a higher impact. Or it could just be a mix of both. The reality is it probably is
Yeah.
just a mix of both because the players that are out are meant to are meant to be part of your best 22, best 23. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just your forwards are just really struggling to present for whatever reason, and it's you just got to
Mm.
try and find like that new kind of balance. Like, do you maybe if you're really running three-pronged tools, like maybe you should go back to two and start playing a little bit more of that ground ball instead, and like try and take
Mm.
advantage of. Granted, Stringer can play tall, like does have that kind of
Yeah.
flexibility, but he's probably better on the ground. And that's probably the best way he's going to be able to have more of that impact.
I think Stringer just needs a bit of supply. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you can just plop Stringer in a forward line and expect him to win. Like, if he gets more than a couple of ground ball gets per game, that's just
Or
yeah.
maybe do something like putting him more at the CBAs and letting Toby float forward a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know about putting him in the CBAs. That's what I'm saying. Is like you got to potentially look at dropping him because I don't think he does that much outside of playing deep. But also, they don't have a system to support a player like Stringer anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not like singling him out. Like they needed the player that we're getting with him, and he has the potential to have big games. But is this something that's going to be like supporting the next GWS forward line, which again doesn't need that much tweaking? It's just as I said, like you're going to have Hogan for a couple of more years. You're developing a really, really good player in let's say Riccardi.
Cadman.
You know who I'm talking. Cadman. I think Riccardi is like sort of walking on thin ice too.
Mm-hmm. I've been
But
telling
you
him
know
for
what I mean. And
years. They
also,
haven't been listening.
yeah. Oh, look, he's had moments where, as a second rock, like there has been moments where it's looked a bit better, but like not today.
No, not today.
But yeah, like because like they're at a point where like a lot of their fringe players are playing better, so like to get some of their better players back on the park, they're going to have to be making these goals or drop players that don't deserve to be dropped. As I said, like, maybe O'Halloran of all the players I see like on the lower half of this game, like deserves to be dropped, but Delana's done a few things. Obviously, Brown, we're talking about structural change there, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so as an interesting comments for Western Sydney. Did a good job coming back. There is a bit of optimism that they'll get some players back. But on the flip side, the Saints, who we should talk about a tiny bit, because again, they were like not executingly 100%, but they were still getting like the majority of their game plan.
Yeah, they had
they were
they actually played
playing
fairly consistent footy for most of the game.
yeah. Yeah, they were moving the ball really nice wide. GWS's defense were trying. They were giving a bit of resistance, but they were still able to win it. They were winning the ball reasonably okay, and as I said, did struggle to convert a bit. Again, conditions sort of explain that, but overall, despite this being like the worst performance, like this being the worst performance of them for the year, A, getting them 4 points. And B, I don't think it's that much of a concern. I still think there's steps that St Kilda are making this year. I'm more positive on the Saints than I was at the start of the year, which is really weird considering they're 1 and 2.
Yeah, I'm still committed to my bit of like I'm not tipping St Kilda until they can prove to me that they're actually a decent team now. I still do not believe that for a second. However, like the only way I'm gonna tip them is if they're up against like your West Coast, your Richmond,
a winning
Essendon.
team. I just think they have strong winning elements.
Like they have the key pieces to be able to win. It's just about executing it.
Yeah, and as I said, they're like, if you look at the Saints depth players and you look at the Giants depth players, like I'll take the Giants every day of the week. Like I think even with this injured side, like this to me seems like a more even team than St Kilda's. It's just as I said, the Saints, like they've been so critical of like, oh, they're paying now so much money, the brought some players in. Is like, they're trying to smooth the transition for their next players. As I said, like we've seen what happens to teams that don't support the next development of players by still having some core pieces. They just don't develop as much as you should. Players that you say are going to be in the next score end up mediocre. They're trying to set up a team which allows players like Jack Carroll, Mitch Owens, Hugo Boxall, Alex Taru, all those sort of players to develop a bit. And as I said, this signs of this year saying, yeah, that might be happening a bit.
Yeah, and that's not even not even including the $2 million man in Nats. Like he's still very young, and
Well, I think at this point you're gonna say like he is like definitely a core player. Like I don't think there's any question
100% he's a core player. But I'm more meaning the fact that like he's still so young.
No, he is young. Like he's a very good profile player to have.
Yeah,
and as I said, you give him a short time contract for a couple of years, and then you just see what happens. Like if you show enough progress, he might stay.
Yeah, exactly.
It might cost you like a tiny bit more, but it's better than just losing a very important piece.
Oh yeah,
and starting again when you already have holes to work with.
Yeah, exactly. All right, jumping over to the injury side of things. Anthony Caminiti is out with a hamstring injury as well. There's a big hamstring plague happening in this round. There's still a couple more we have to touch on later in the games. On the MRO side of things, Toby Green would find $1,000 for striking Marcus Windhager. And AFL.com.au did bring up an interesting statistic to go on top of this, and that is the Toby Green versus Zach Butters track record. I'm going to quickly run through this because it's just very interesting at how quickly Zach Butters has caught up. So Toby's current track record as of this fine is he's had 264 appearances at the MRO, 31 of them being sanctions. In games. 264 games, 31 sanctions by the MRO, 16 suspensions, and $49,350 in fines. That is ridiculous. However, in only 141 appearances, Zach Butters has been sanctioned 20 times, suspended for 2 games, and is currently sitting on $49,125 in fines. These two are the most fined players in the AFL. Toby, I think, getting close to being the most suspended man in the AFL. I think there's someone that's still on top of that. I can't remember. But that is the fact that pretty much both of them combined is $100,000 is insane.
Yeah, like you could. I was gonna say, I don't know what you buy for $100,000. Everything's so expensive now. Probably like I don't know, a car and 1 tank of petrol.
You could just put down a deposit for a car at that point. That's about it.
I need $100,000 to work out what to do with $100,000.
Absolutely. My bank account is open.
Yeah. So no, that's what I say. I think the interesting difference is like at least Butters hasn't got that many suspensions. I still think he needs to rein it in, but at least he's keeping it to stupid niggly acts, but like, I don't think it's like Toby where he's going to take, a risky and dangerous cheap shot an opponent like he did earlier in his career.
Yeah.
Toned it down a bit, but
not to mention
some stuff that you don't like
mention Toby Green is the reason the cleats up rule now exists.
Yeah. Well, I think that was like what 2019.
That was forever ago at this point.
Yeah. I think it was against the Bulldogs by memory. I don't know why, but I do remember the actual incident. But yeah, as I said, so again, I think there are 2 different breeds of pest. But at the same time, like Butters, just please, just you wouldn't have to ask for so much contract if you stopped getting fined.
True. Well, he needs more money so he can pay for his fines.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, well, Port might be able to pay you if you didn't need that extra bit of money in your contract. But anyway, we'll talk about Butters in a moment. Shall we go on to? Oh, it's not the Sunday games. It's the last Saturday game.
It is the last Saturday game because games out in the West are back. We got 2 this week after not having any for the first 2 rounds. So with Fremantle hosting Melbourne on this Saturday night game. With a 48-point margin, Freo win out 17-16, 118 to 10-10, 17.
Yeah, I've done some bad tipping this season. I don't think I've made any more weirdly optimistic tip than tipping Melbourne over Fremantle, despite me knowing that Fremantle played okay last week. Despite me knowing the fact that, Melbourne are a young team, I was just like, I didn't like Freo selection changes. I think that, they are riding a bit of a fine line, which I still think's true. But it was clear from the outset that this contest was probably always going to be Freo. And despite the clinical nature of this happening purely in the second half, especially that third quarter, one of the best you'll see from Freo. They were absolutely monstering them. The first half actually featured a lot of mucking around due to poor ball use. A lot more so by Melbourne, but there was a lot of time where counter-attack just wouldn't happen because Freo would turn the ball over straight away. And it sort of, mucked around. Kept Melbourne slightly in it until that third quarter happened, and it was just ruthless. Shai Bolton turned a good game into a club best game. Dutters got off the chain due to the better inside 50s. He scored 3 goals in that third quarter. And Melbourne, with the disco down, they could not keep Josh Tracy contained. He kicked, I think it was 3 or 4 goals. By far the best forward in the Fremantle midfield. And yeah, it was just another game where Melbourne had a few really good performers,
Mm-hmm.
a few players trying to execute their game plan but struggling, and then just like a couple of players that just had a really bad game.
Yeah, it's from what I saw of this game, I think I saw at least the first half. Like it was like fairly close in terms of like how the midfield was kind of being played. But Freo were just
Yeah.
like being a lot cleaner with ball in hand. The opportunities they had for conversion were successful for most of the time. And it was just overall like a very just it was just so much more interesting to kind of watch Freo do their thing because they were able to kind of like work around the tag that was kind of floating between Sarong and Brayshaw, and it just allowed the other one to
Yeah.
kind of just have that much more of an impact.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I will say that was a bit of a, not a error, but like, I do like question like Tholstroppy tags Sarong to good effect. Like 16 touches for the match, 1 goal. He had his moments, but like Freo didn't care. And then like they did the worst thing, which is like, I hate it when they like switch tags to players like in form. Because again, if it's like a young player and as I said, they're in form, like a player like Brayshaw, like, is a different player. He's going to have different structures, and it's very hard because you go into a play and you read up Sarong's patterns and all that, and you're able to do that. But it's just hard unless you've had a lot of experience in playing him before, to just switch. And like it didn't affect him at all. Tholstrup just went completely out of the game, and yeah, as I said, I would dare say probably lost a bit of confidence there. But you know what I mean? Like that was just a mistake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I personally think that if you're, I don't think you can play hot potato with tags. I think you either tag and decide that it's not making a huge effect and then just go, back to normal. Or as I said, you just, maybe switch a player to do it. I wouldn't exactly put the same player on, But anyway, that's just one little thing.
No, I
Um,
completely agree. Like there are definitely games that we've had or we watched in the past. Um, not necessarily this year, but like last year. Where a team has gone for a tag as part of the game plan for like half a game. They realize it's not
mm,
like not worked, and then they've kind of not necessarily switched the tag to another player, but like switched that player to more of like a run with rather than a hard tag kind of
mm,
role, and it's had a greater effect because it's like
yeah.
allowed them to have a little bit more of um that attack on the ball rather than attack on the player, basically.
Yeah, well, as I said, like the other thing you can do is like you, as I said, like run with, like put a good but maybe struggling to find a bit of ball, like just get a natural ball winner on Andrew Brayshaw. Try, like he's going to be around the ball. He's winning a few clearances and all that,
Mm.
and you'd put a tiny bit of pressure on him. but it also allows like another game player to just be involved more in the contest. Because again, like Matthew Johnson still found a lot of ball. Shai Bolton was absolutely fantastic in clearances. Like you're not gonna do much to nullify that midfield. Like that midfield at that point has already won.
Yeah, exactly right.
Like like they're just you're basically trying to stop a waterfall by putting your hand out, and stopping it. Just move back and forward. It's just not going to happen. So anyway, Shai Bolton absolutely fantastic. By the way, like I think that was his game in Docker's colours, and I think very mature. Like you saw him dish off a few more times. Like he still goes for goal. Like that's his natural instinct, but you can see he's put himself in more situations where he's like, okay, this is not a goal shooting scenario, so I'm just gonna not even think about it, like dish off. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, with space is gonna go for goal. But he now knows scenarios where it's just not on the table, which I think is
he's
good.
starting to play a lot more of a selfless role, which is something that I've
Mm,
been wanting him to do for years at that point. Um,
yeah,
because he fits that kind of talent where like he basically a Cosy Pickett essentially. Like you can be absolutely elite in the midfield, but you're at the point like where you can tell that won't be the one to go for that goal.
mm,
You can create the opportunity, but you don't have to always feel like you're the one that has to make that conversion.
yeah. Because I want to look. Yeah, he had 9 score involvements and still like had enough shots, like 2 goal ones. That's a pretty good return. 32 disposals as well. He had a lot of the ball.
Yeah, had a fantastic
And
game.
as I said, yeah, as I said, and 9 clearances. Um, yeah, as I said, Melbourne. I think, yeah, as I said, it was just interesting. Like on paper, like technically, 33 clearances to 30. Like you think, that's not too bad. But like there was so much difference between the two. And it's like Jack Steele, he was solid enough, but he was battling to get the ball out.
Yeah,
Max Gawn as well. Like, to be honest, what a game. Like 8 intercept marks. He was doing defensive running. He was competing really well with Jackson and Tracy. And yeah, as I said, he was trying his best. And, his ball use was actually good. He was probably like the best ball using midfielder for Melbourne.
that's
I also think that's also a tiny bit of a concern.
it's definitely a concern considering how much Gorn actually does for this team, and it feels
Yeah.
like the rest of the team doesn't lift around him in some cases. Like obviously, some players will step up, because he's your
Yeah.
captain, he's a good leadership symbol, but like when it's not everyone, you kind of really, especially when you're up against a team that
Yeah.
is like really good, especially in that midfield, like
Hmm.
then it's a lot harder.
I don't think systematically though. Like I wouldn't argue that Melbourne weren't trying or not putting
No,
enough
I don't
pressure
think in
on.
this game it's necessarily a
Um,
systematic issue. I think it might have
yeah,
just been
uh,
like an outclassing kind of issue.
yeah. As an outclassing, and as a few down performance, like Van Ruin again went back to struggling. I really thought Myercheck had a very weird game. He just didn't quite take a few more of those opportunities. He scored a goal. Alex Pearce mainly shut him down, and you can't really blame him for being shut down by one of the better defenders in the league. But yeah, there was just a few moments where I just felt like he was coming up, but when he did, he dropped a few marks. He just looked a bit behind the 8 ball. So and as if just a few. I think what I'm saying is like some of these players were like some more mid-level players like Chung of Gia.
Yeah,
Unfortunately had a fair few turnovers. I said Van Ruin isn't that level, but was there. And obviously Harrison Petty really sort of struggled keeping Josh Tracy down, especially as I said since Disco Turner went down. He was his natural opponent. Tough role for him, but you know what I mean. It's just like those little things where you know it's really hard for your lower level players to have a great game if your more senior mid level players aren't.
yeah,
It just like erodes the system of the club.
yeah. That's exactly
And
right.
Yeah, and as I said, they were trying. I actually like some of their ball movement. Like that, not there wasn't too many times where like Melbourne, you shouldn't be going for that target. It's just Melbourne, you should be hitting that target,
Oh yeah,
and they oftentimes weren't.
oh yeah. There was definitely plenty of moments like that during this game for Melbourne. But like yeah, just like entire credit to Freo that like their system is clearly working so far. And it's just
Hmm.
hoping that they're able to kind of follow through a little bit more against a lot of the other opponents because we know that last season they did have a fair few issues coming up against teams that were better than them. Um, but hopefully, no, it wasn't like as much of like a as like the
Yeah,
Bulldogs kind of scenario where they were kind of like briefly labeled as flat track bullies because they like struggled to beat top eight teams. But this year so far, like Dogs definitely a higher standard at the moment, and I think Freo could probably follow
yeah.
suit.
I don't know about policy, but I think yeah, as I said, they just got a few niggling question marks. As I said, Amos, what do you do with him?
Yeah,
Sean Darcy, is he worth playing? I do actually backtrack on my comments last week. I can see that, merit in playing Sean Darcy when, Max Gorn's on the park, you need a big body to go up against him. But, like, is he really needed against Richmond? Like, if you're going to play a Ruckman at 50% against a team with no Ruckman, like, wouldn't you just, like, rotate Luke Jackson and Mason Cox and get, like, as much offensive efficiency as you can?
you would think so,
Like,
especially if you're gonna
you think
try
so.
and
It'll be
label a
interesting.
game like that as like
Mm.
your big percentage booster kind of game early on.
Yeah, as I said, I think Fremantle will try and give Richmond respect, but it's very hard to when there's just so many matchups that you can probably say, okay, we've got a clear natural win on that. Like I think teams, while they respect their opponents, they know where strengths lie, and they know if they can get players prepared, then naturally some things will just should go into gear. It's just making sure you do that preparation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right.
And yeah, what I'm saying is if Darcy isn't dropped this week, I just don't see him being dropped. And it's going to be yeah, they're going to ride or die on this very tandem ruck thing where Jackson both plays threatening forward and the most threatening tap ruck, while Darcy just, sort of allows Jackson to rest a bit.
Nothing wrong with
Maybe it's
that.
not the most efficient use of players, but I mean, you get 25 now.
Yeah,
That might just be how football is played. You don't need to play all your players for a huge length of time. Hell, Alex Pearce only spent half the time on the field.
yeah. I was gonna say like some teams are
Luke Ryan,
actually
who,
like really taking
yeah,
advantage of having the extra space on the bench.
yeah, like Luke Ryan, who wasn't even meant to play, spends 86 and plays as a loose defender. And while Walker gets out, like I don't understand what they're doing at selection at all, but it's like working enough. Sherry also comes in. That was a great performance. Just
Yes.
wrapping up here.
Yeah. No.
That's worth putting out on his own. Very
Definitely,
good on the outside.
definitely worth a mention.
Um, Especially when it wasn't always an outside sort of game. Like he was only involved in moments when they needed him. But he provided a lot of dash, and his ball use was good, which is all you can ask.
Yeah, no, that's really all you can ask. But yeah, no, like fantastic time to bring him in because he came up against a quality opponent, like quote unquote quality opponent, and like actually got some
Mm.
really really good experience out of it. But in terms of Melbourne, they do lose a little bit of experience with Daniel Disco Turner going out with a hand injury. I have no idea what the massive extent of it is, but fair chance he could be
Mm.
out for 2 weeks at minimum. Um,
I
hopefully,
think they were saying something like that. This is the
yeah, I don't know if it's like a
I think
finger or if it's like just a.
it's not. No. It's like the Is that like the meniscal lining or
Oh,
something in the
yeah.
hand? It's essentially just like that, the webbing and all that. I think it just got a bit torn.
Oh,
Needs
yeah.
a bit to recover.
Yeah. I'm understanding
If
that.
he comes back on, he'll have tape around his hand.
Oh
You
yeah,
know
of
what I
course,
mean?
of course, of course, of course.
So
Yeah,
it's
because
either a couple of weeks or managed.
yeah, it'll be one of the two. Like that's about it. It'll be one of the two. All right. And over on the MRO side of things, Patrick Ross was fined $1,000 for quote unquote other misconduct. I think they had like some words, like an exchanging
Oh,
of
I
words,
can explain this if you want.
against Harrison
You
Brady.
didn't see this?
I only
Oh, you know
saw
if you saw it.
I only saw like a little bit of it, but I wasn't really understanding like the extent.
Yeah. Basically, Patrick Voss, who at this point had like next to no influence on the game. Like this is probably lowering of colours for Patrick Voss. First quarter, just ruffles. Harrison Petty's hair. Arguably, from what we gather, he was just making fun of his bald spot, which is just like, yeah. And then like Petty was obviously annoyed. He's like, yeah, don't do that, mate. Maybe not those exact words, but it's whatever. And then Patrick Voss does a little crybaby face, which again, like I get like being a little bit of a pest. Like I think there's a line where it's like you can't just like start crap with other players and then when they reasonably tell you to piss off, you're like you can't really do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I
Like
completely
it's
agree.
just a bad look. It turns in, from just lightly trying to get into someone else's skin. Like even the head rub, like it's you shouldn't be doing it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh well, that's just like a bad attempt at trying to annoy someone. But to double down on it, like it starts turning into targeting. Patrick Voss really had no form right to do such a thing. I'm not saying if he had a good game, like he could do it, but it's like, what are you doing at that point?
Yeah.
Like I said, he's had a mixed start to the year. One really, where he hasn't been quite hitting the scoreboard as he'd like to. I think he's what 2 goals, 5 or something for the year.
Yeah, it's a very
Um,
minuscule kind of number at the moment, I'm pretty sure.
yeah, therefore was unfiring. So as I said, as I said, it's been noted his effort to build and come back into this Freo side. He's like had a really good year last year, but like you also got to remember, like these are some of the signs to why he was dropped
Yeah,
at Essendon.
that's exactly right.
And I think if I was Longmire, I would be like getting into his ears, like don't take your spot for granted. Hard position to do when you're playing Amos week in week out, but you know what I mean. Like I would definitely just be like, yeah, going into the year, not discouraging him from like thing, but like getting him to say, hey, remember there's always a task at hand, and that just takes priority.
Yeah, I'm gonna just kind of use that as a segue to the next game. I'll be honest, because I feel like we kind of talked extensively about this match. And I use that as a segue purely
Ugh.
for the fact that Essendon is playing. That's kind of the only connection I've got. But we're heading over to
Yeah,
the Adelaide Oval for our first Sunday game out of the two Sunday games. And with a 63-point margin, Port Adelaide finally getting their first win of the season. 2013 133 to 10-10-70 against the Bombers.
yeah. So I was on Sunday. I was just basically had this game on. I was waiting to go to my granddad's house. We're meeting for him for lunch. He's
Mm-hmm.
getting out of the house from the village. Always nice to have a chat. Um, so as I said, so I watched this, and I knew I wasn't going to get watch the whole game. But I was hoping like I get Essendon a bad, and I don't want to take things for granted. But I just hope there's like a comfortable, safe margin. And then I just watched that first quarter, and Essendon were absolutely putrid. I just I haven't seen like as much open space or lack of defensive running for a little while. Horn Francis had 3 goals in the first quarter, 6 marks inside 50 for the night. The Dons just really did nothing to try and run back with him. Like he was honestly a spare man in that forward line, and it's a forward line. It's a Essendon back line. That's it's got a bit of trouble. Redmond got injured. It's already not much talent there. Already had their hands full with Georgie and Luca. And yeah, it was just no real setup to try and protect that defense. And it just allowed poor inside 50 after inside 50. Even when Essendon were a goal in front, I think it was like 7 inside 50s to 1. And that was Essendon's the only goal
Mm-hmm.
for the quarter. So, yeah, as I said, it was just really, yeah, it was sad. Uh, Again, probably what encapsulated the first quarter. Nate Caddy gets the ball from a loose chain, gets a bit of space, has the whole of the goal square to walk up into, coming from a slight angle, kicks it a bit early, slams it into the post. Yeah, as I said, honestly, Nate Caddy, while we're talking about him,
he was really trying. Like 4-3, 9 score involvements from 12 touches. Wasn't the cleanest,
No,
but he was trying.
he was.
And this is what's sad about Essendon is like, even when you got some of the younger players that were trying, like Port didn't match up well at all against him. Like Aaliyah had the soft matchup. He was just playing as an offensive halfbacker when, he was just not matching up well against him.
Mm-hmm.
Marshall couldn't keep up with him. He was raiding with Asava Radagalia, who I think was the best of those three defenders for the night. And, as I said, they couldn't answer him, but it didn't matter because, like, Essendon could only really get the ball in their forward half at pure junk time. And it was sad because, as I said, like, Nate Caddy was doing all the right things. He was pushing up. He was providing contests and all that. Like, it was a bit better than 9 score involvements, 12 touches, which is already a solid game as a forward line player in a very struggling team. But yeah, as I said, it was just the lack of support around him, especially by the midfielders.
Yeah.
Jai Caldwell, again, he won a few ball, but he was just like not really that defensively accountable, even with his 6 tackles and all that. Merritt, even he was like sort of running one way. And then you got just players that just were, just there. Braden Fiorini, I would say, is like one of the maturer players that just didn't have any impact at all.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Langford, Ben Mackay.
Standard at the moment for those two.
Yeah, it's just so... Yeah. And I'm going to give a politer way of putting it than I did in this morning's Discord chat where my Essendon friend was talking about sacking the coach and all that.
Yes.
Or, like, putting the possibility. Is that I think Essendon have gone through, 4 coaches now in the span of 10 years. Honestly, in that same time, they have not developed almost any on-field leaders. Like Zach Merritt, I'm not even sure if the best captain in the league. I think with the amount he's asked to do on-field, he does that terrifically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not questioning him at all. But he really needs support around him. Like, you look at others, like, as I mentioned, Kyle Langford, Ben Mackay, Darcy Parish.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even see Andy McGrath as, like, really that big a commanding captain. Like, honestly, you don't really see Andy McGrath getting around players. At least, again, it's hard to tell because you don't always have the camera around him, especially as a backman. But you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have leadership presence. And at least that's what we can tell on field. Like, again, off the field, he might be one of the best captains of the world. Well, I'm not able to judge that.
Correct.
But there's no doubt, like, on field, there's no one in the defense that's, like, organizing their defensive lineups. Like, even a captain or good captain or not. Like, Andrew McGrath isn't a defense captain. Like, I'm not turning to Andrew McGrath to, like, organize the defense and all that. Their forward line has no one in there from the last 5 years that's grouped them all together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even back in the day, like Joe Danaher, he was forced to play pretty much like a hodgepodge, really.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, he just did what he wanted to. He had a bit of injury struggle, a bit of frustrations, and then he gets shipped off. And then you put him in a system that organizes itself a bit better, and he leagues better. And as I said, like, it's why some players drop off. It's why Peter Wright's so up and down. It's why Ben Mackay, even though he's going from North Melbourne, not exactly a defensive powerhouse, he plays somehow worse in defense.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. Like, Ben Mackay was a much better defender at North Melbourne, and there's no real reason except for North put a bit more effort into, like, making... Like, I think North's defense was better in, like, the earlier parts of 2020 and all that. Like, you had McDonald, the tail end of some other mediocre but still defensively accountable players. But you know what I mean? Is, like, they had a clear set plan, whereas I just don't really see Essendon ever coming together and doing that. I think they're just, like... They're almost like the perfect Melbourne media team. Like, they get a few young players going well, and they're like, oh, we're going to, like, play off the back of them. And, as I said, they just don't develop because of that. Like, it is really a big turning point from that 2024 start You know, we all know that they were playing above their potential, but you know, they were still playing good football. There were still like signs of some leadership, some quote unquote Essendon edge. You know what I mean? And nothing. For 1.5 years, there is no leadership growth in any of their players, or none that I would personally, you know, say that's obvious to see as an outsider. Yeah, sorry. I said that this wasn't going to be harsh, but it did end up being a bit harsh. But I mean, I think it has to be said. Yeah.
No, honestly,
as for Port, they look good, especially when there's no pressure being applied against them.
honestly, I think you're right. The fact that we kind of have to be harsh at Essendon because of the fact that like they have gone through so much in the past 12 months. Like we know that like last year was so tumultuous on mostly due to injury. Pretty much 90% of their issues were were due to the fact that their injury list was so extensive. But the fact that like a lot of those players have come back, and like the effect hasn't like affected their existence in the best 23 like hasn't really changed at all. And like
well, the thing is, it's like you look at their injury list. The only two players that you would say would come back and provide a leadership role, Nick Martin and Jordan Ridley. And Nick Martin, I don't even see as that much of a leader. He's more of a spark player.
Yeah.
I don't think he needs to be a leader. I'm not asking him to, but
No.
like, you know, that's just And Jordan Ridley, who I do think I think he plays more of a better role than commands the defense, but there's no doubt the defense plays better with him in it. So I will say that Jordan Ridley is a player that they could look to. Hopefully he's back next week, but like he's made of glass. Like they know that Ridley's not going to be a 20-game season reliably.
Like the risk at the moment is like just trying to find the right players who can be the leaders in their defense and in their forward line, and like kind of basically just try and like rally the troops and not make them feel like they have to play selfishly to have that impact as a tall forward. Like follow the Tom Lynch footsteps as of right now, and like just, you know, if he's gonna start, you know, playing with not playing with like I've already forgotten where I was going with this. It was like you just kind of want someone who, and I actually, if Nate Caddy wasn't so young, I would use him as a good example. But like, you want someone who has the right sort of motivations, the right sort of characteristics to have that kind of on-field leadership. But you want to be able. You also want the player to, I guess, not be so young, because you know he's only 21. He's still very much not in the right sort of age bracket to lead by example in that forward line. When you have, you know, your Langford, your Peter Wright, and anyone else is kind of currently floating up there who is an older player, who should have that kind of leadership experience and just doesn't put their hand up and take advantage and lead these kids to try to have that better impact.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I guess what you're saying is like, you know, with Tom Lynch and all that, is like, at least Richmond have other areas where they have defensive accountability. Like their forward line, yeah, sure, there's no real leadership. Again, I don't really see Lynch as that player. I think he's more of a, you know, does his personal performance, and that sort of helps the team out, you know, which again, like, it wouldn't be a problem if it was just 2 meter Peter just being like, you know, okay, I'm the only one doing my, you know, sort of tall forward role. I'm not going to like lead the others, but I'm going to do my role week in, week out. Sort of player. If that was the only issue, that would be fine. But it's every line.
Yeah, that's exactly
like Richmond
right.
has defensive leaders. Even in the midfield, like I would take Tim Taranto's leadership. I would take the Meatballs' leadership. Even Jack Ross sometimes takes responsibility. You know, we're seeing more and more like, you know, Richmond, you know, maybe they're grit and grind, but, you know, turn the ball over. But at least they're putting in defensive pressure. Whereas I said, like, Essendon was anything but two-way running. It was really until Blaze got tired in the fourth quarter where Essendon even got a sniff of scoring. And I just think in this league, like, it doesn't really matter if you score, 5 or 6 goals late to 5 or 6 goals. You know, that literally means nothing. You can just write that off. That's not well, to put a comparison, like it's a lot different than the last half of the Eagles against the Suns game.
Yeah, that's right.
Which we'll talk about, which, sort of acts as a bit of a prelude. But unfortunately, we've got to talk about some injuries first.
We do, but like just before I get to that, it's like the fact that Port did actually have a decent bounce back after last week is good to see.
Yeah,
like
I think that's the
we
difference
know
between
that
the
they are a
two.
team again that are capable of playing damn good footy, but they just they have a lot of faults, and these injuries are also not going to help in that regard at the moment, especially the big one to Connor Rozee, who could miss like quite a few months of footy if his hamstring issue is like a major issue. Thankfully, as far as we're aware, it's not like an ACL or PCL or anything like that, but it is like
no.
big.
He MS confirmed it
in
the post-match. He said it was a hamstring, and people were like, phew, and then it's like, well, it's actually high grade, so like this is possibly needs surgery, but you're looking at best case scenario a month of football, worst case scenario 2 to 3. So,
it's not looking good in that regard.
Not great. But I will say, like, because we haven't really talked that much about Port, as I said, the good thing about the bounce back, it was just so even. And it's the good thing I say about Port Adelaide is like, I think they're going to be a lower half of the ladder side. But I do think they have the culture to, put their head high, bounce back after bad performances. I just think, it's going to be inconsistency. I'm not going to say that they're, again, a contender for like that 9th or 10th spot just because they smacked up Essendon. But like, at least you can see where their best football performance is going to take them.
Yeah, exactly right. Just jumping back over to the injuries now, and Miles Bergman also is out with an ankle injury. That could only be a couple of weeks. It could be a little bit longer. I'm not 100% certain on the timeline on that one as of yet. And then Essendon also have 2 injuries. Mason Redmond with a knee and Harry Sharp also with an ankle.
That is actually the rookie Dyson Sharp.
Oh, Dyson Sharp. Sorry. My mistake.
Yeah. No, it's all right. Harry Sharp plays for Melbourne still? Maybe he got delisted? I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Oh, well, it's but I mean, it is unfortunate for Dyson Sharp.
It doesn't matter.
But,
yeah. And as I said, he actually played really decently for the first, the first game, and then like a tiny bit for this game. He didn't really have that much impact, but he did a couple of things.
No, that's so what you kind of, for a rookie, you want them to have still that developing impact, and I believe that besides the injury, they hopefully achieved that in the minutes that they played.
Yeah.
All right.
Now on to one of the biggest surprises of the week.
Yeah.
Not saying it's unpredictable, but
so
geez, they looked nice.
I don't know if I want to call this a spoon bowl match, because this didn't feel like a spoon bowl match at all. Out in the West, back at Optus Stadium with our last game of the round, the West Coast Eagles hosting North Melbourne, and with a 17-point margin, the West Coast Eagles sneak out their first win of the season. Potentially their only win of the season. With the way that this game was kind of played, that may not be the case. But with 17-9, 111 to 15-4, 94.
Well, it's on the board, and it's a lot quicker than last year. And honestly, as I said, West Coast really put in a solid 3-quarter performance after getting jumped to a 24-point deficit in the first quarter. They weren't bad, but they were definitely a bit shaky and definitely looking outclassed. And looked to be outclassed by a team further along in the rebuild. As I said, scoring overall looked a bit easy. Both teams lost a key defender, West Coast being Harry Edwards and North Melbourne being Griffin Logue, both fairly early. But West Coast after halftime, obviously they caught back in the second quarter. Their bowl use looked much better. They're winning a few more contests. But then they just kept the Roos half an arm's length away at all times. Beautiful conversion by both sides. Like, this was one of the better finishing games you'll see. And for the Eagles, such an even performance by all lines, especially in contrast to North, who had a very... it was a typical North performance. Like, some players had a lot of possession, They mightn't have done much with it, but it was a lot better than the players just having next to no impact. First things first, though, we have got to talk about the Eagles midfield because we talked in the preseason in my analysis. They were the AFL's statistical ballast in stats last year, and they scored 8-2 from stoppage, a goal more than North were able to manage, despite being a bit beaten in clearance numbers and giving 40 disposals to Sheasel and LDU. Like, you could almost understand that if, like, Harley Reid had, like, a statistical, like, mammoth game. Like, he did really well. Like, he was one of the best players, don't get me wrong. But, like, he didn't, like, get 40 and a couple of goals or whatever. Like, Yo didn't absolutely go off the chain. He was good. Like, the Eagles really found the balance between inside and outside game. Their movement was really good. And you've got to give it just to the amount of outside players that they've gotten to lift in this first 2 games. And in this game, Dersma, Cripps and Murdoch, aka the Sparky that the Eagles needed, had massive impacts. And just to say, you know, about this outside dominance, which you don't normally get to see about it, 8 players for West Coast had 5+ post ground ball get clearances. Post clearance ground ball gets.
Yeah.
So once the clearance went out, which was often contested, you know, North just turned the ball over a lot of the time. The Eagles were there to sweep it out. And the best one for North Melbourne was, you know, a few players with 4, and only one of them were midfielders. So their midfield outside the contest was losing the ball. You know, sure, they had LDU and Sheasel winning it, but it doesn't really matter. Like, as we said, with North at their worst, when they're just turning the ball over.
Yeah.
And they weren't getting it inside 50. They got it inside 50 more, they probably would have won because their forward line was so efficient. Like, their forward line was absolutely great. Like, you know, solid performance, a lot of good marks. Eagles, you know, still struggling to purely defend. But, you know, Steve was taking everything. Darling even got a few moments. Actually, no, he didn't. He did have a shot against his old side, but he sprayed it. That's right. Zerha was the one that got a few moments.
That's right.
And you know what I mean? Paul Curtis got a bit involved. But overall, like, you know, they just didn't have... Like, they had enough possession, but, like, you know, as I said, 59 inside 50s to 45. West Coast, of all teams, had inside 50 dominance. And, like, for a team that's shaped like North Melbourne, where you're so forward half of the ball, you can't be having that against a potential bottom 4 side.
Yeah.
Like, it just shows a bit of a flaw in rebuilding strategy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the fact that, like, the Roos, whilst managing to get on top of the Eagles early, weren't able to sustain any of it. And the fact that, like, the Eagles, I won't say they clearly wanted it more, but, like, they were able to finally utilize the personnel that they've acquired, both via, you know, trades and, you know, the draft and stuff like that, and actually have a really, really positive impact for the first time in a long time, and give like all of these kids that they've brought in like a really genuine fun game to get experience from.
Yeah.
Like,
and I want to just interject.
It's like a perfect kind of storm of growth.
Yeah, and like I think what you want to say, because I was going to say something similar, is like, I don't think the Eagles wanted it more in terms of winning. Like, I think both teams genuinely wanted to win. But I think the Eagles player wanted to be involved more. And that's not just like purely winning the ball. They wanted to be a part of a scoring chain, and it showed in their positioning.
Yeah.
Like, the Eagles went so hard at the ball, but as soon as that ball was won by someone, they were like, okay, I really want to be the next part of the chain. They spread out, unlike North, which can be very congested. Like, as I said, they just have so many short handballs. And, you know, as I said, a lot of possession, not that much impact. Where the Eagles just did so much running and spread. And this is where a young team can get better because, you know, like, you know, we talk about North Melbourne and it's like, okay, like, I'm not going to blame Sheasel. Like, he's had 40 possessions, you know, a few turnovers. But when you look at Melbourne play, they don't always have the most options running around to kick to.
Yeah, that's
Whereas
right.
the Eagles work so hard to give their fringe players 2 or 3 options to go to. They felt a lot more comfortable with the ball. They missed targets, but they had enough space around them to where they weren't just going like the one risky kick that was the only option there that causes a turnover to the other ground. They were spreading them. They were moving the ball well, and it really showed. And it's one of those things where they were just so even. Like there weren't really that many players that had a really good match. In fact, there was a few players that had a very quiet match. Tyler Young looked a bit sore.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Newton didn't get really involved in the forward line.
Mm-hmm.
Hamish Davis, just okay. But as I said, they just had so many players like just doing their bit. Even if they weren't having the best day. I think Matt Flynn was the biggest example of that. Did you see his goal?
I did see the goal. That was actually one of the few things I did actually catch from this game. Like that was wild.
Holy hell. Like, I don't care that Tristan Cherry gets 200 super coach points. I'm taking Matt Flynn. So, like, it was by far the best thing he's done in his career.
Oh yeah,
I hope he, is very chuffed
and I mean,
after
it's.
that.
I'll be honest, it's not that hard, purely for the fact that you're a West Coast player in
Yeah.
some of the really toughest years that West Coast has dealt with. But just yeah, I genuinely think that the fact that I think the fact that Elliot Yeo is actually healthy and on the park, I think he genuinely makes such a big difference. Because he's got that on field leadership role. But also he's just insanely talented in the contest. And he's kind of the perfect player
Yeah.
that you can team up with Reed and Duff Tyler, and they will basically influence each other to have that kind of impact. And we saw it plain as day that these 2 number 1 draft picks were just basically cleaned up.
Yeah, and I actually want to say, Elliot Yeo, again, fantastic game. I want to give the Eagles credit because, they were not just trying to base a game around Elliot Yeo. They were not like, oh, Yeo comes back, he'll just win us the ball. He only had 3 clearance, and he was inside the contest, but you're actually treating him like the veteran you want him to be, and just occasionally using him up as a link up, to take some of the more finesse kicks, which he did to some degree. His kicking was a bit off, but I think he'll take a bit of time to come back into the contest. But you know what I mean? He had a healthy amount of contested possession, but it wasn't exactly like he was shouldering the load. Milan Murdoch was just as impressive, if not more, just considering where he's come from. And you know what I mean? He's a player from nowhere. You're not at the start of the season suggesting that Milan Murdoch is much into their long-term plans. And yet, he comes in, does his really good pressure roll, kicks 2 goals, and is absolutely fantastic, and I just think it's that width of players that they've, last year showed signs. They've rewarded the players that have shown signs, cut off the ones that were there, but, just in the side because it was a week in, week out. They just didn't have the depth. Went out and got players to fill holes, and we're seeing, it's cohesion. It's only 2 games. They might be terrible by the time of the end of next year, but it's something to build on.
Yeah.
And as I said, for a coach like McQualter, you see their best, and that's important.
Yeah.
Because you can always come back to this game and say, this is how we want to play. This is your role. This is what we want you to fulfill. And this is how a good structure can get us a win against a team where their list probably should be ahead in terms of quality.
Yeah, it's exactly right in the fact that this is a win that West Coast just desperately needed, and I don't think it was necessarily the fear of being lost again. I think it was just more so the fact that they need
reward for effort, I reckon.
Yeah, exactly. They just needed to. They just needed to lock in, and to put it simply, and they did, and they put in that much effort, got the reward for it, and now they can put themselves in a position, because the only injury that's going to kind of be hard is Harry Edwards. But
Yeah.
if like Tyler Young or oh my god, there are not many players up there like in defense that I can remember. I guess BJ maybe floats
Gibney.
down there. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, Jinby.
Jinby's probably the bigger one.
Who's Tom
Um,
Cole will probably come back if either
Brock?
well, Edwards is going to miss because I think it's timing
Brock
wise.
is usually floating down there as well.
Yeah, Sandy Brock like is not a good key defender, but he can get his ball use.
Yeah, but I mean, like, just like if they're able to kind of, use that on-field leadership that they've been developing really well. Like, of Elliot Yeo being back is hugely helpful for the midfield. And Jake Waterman, being in, I think he's basically the one kind of commanding the forward line at the moment.
Yeah, well, as I said, he didn't actually. I mean, look, it was a very almost game by Waterman. He did a few good things, but just didn't convert. 1 goal, 3. But you can definitely tell again just by being, and again, he is a commanding presence. It's like Job Shanahan. Then gets a few really good moments. He took 8 marks all up, scores 2 goals.
Yeah.
Duff Tytler, who we talked about earlier, there's a lot less pressure. He was actually really good in the ruck contest. Again, like Sherry was really good. But I don't think the midfield unit as a whole actually did well against the West Coast ruckmen, which you don't often say in a sports analyst podcast.
No, it's
that the West Coast ruckmen had a big influence on a game of football.
No, it is. It's a very interesting kind of statistic in this situation because of the fact that, like, North have Tristan Sherry, who is an absolute beast in the ruck, and West Coast don't.
Yeah, it's not like he had a bad game.
No, but like West Coast on the other hand, like don't really have a ruck of that caliber. They haven't for multiple years now at this point. But are able to win the ball around the ground and the areas, and especially are able to force a turnover in their backline. They've started to like really learn more about pressuring in that area. And they're able to get that
and
down
scoring
into a
from
chain
turnovers.
and create scores.
We saw like West Coast be able to get intercepts and then turn it over in their back half and just, as I said, either from behind or the few intercepts that they did get. Because again, their defense was creating pressure last year. It just like fell flat in the absolute wave of entries that they were forced to take.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas now we're actually seeing offense being generated from, which isn't a step that I thought we would see. And again, maybe it's just because it's North, but like I would have thought that would take a bit to develop. But I mean, if the signs are there, like that's a really optimistic first step for them.
It is. It's definitely a first step in like a huge amount of steps to take. But it's like they're definitely in a good position to where they could start pushing in the right trajectory that they need to go in. Like obviously it's still going to take probably a few years to like actually start, climbing the ladder more consistently. But this is the fantastic first step.
It doesn't change my prediction of like 3 or 4 wins.
No.
But
no, I think it's going to end up that way
it's going to have it early. As for North, as I said, I think, I don't want to talk about the same points we've been getting on about the podcast where, North just haven't really made a list or system that's conductive to consistently winning football. But it's just such a stark contrast when, as I said, it's a 1-game knee-jerk reaction. Like, do not, as I said, take this as me thinking West Coast's going to win. But at least, like, the list changes, the risk that they've played in, like, moving players' position to try and create different looks, at least that has started to show the signs of paying off. Whereas North just still feel like they're trying to ground out this forward half game that just isn't up to snuff. It worked against Port, who were like supplying turnovers out the wazoo for them to just blaze in and kick easy goals, which again, their forward line love kicking. Like it's not like they have any problems with the forward line anymore. Like fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's their midfield and back line. And as I said, for a team that was like stated, they're a midfield only, they only have talent in the midfield. As we're saying for ages, like you just don't see any legitimate winning metrics from it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, as I said, it's like, you have to say it's almost like Carlton where you have a talented midfield that just doesn't have the system to convert anything of worth from it.
Mm.
And you don't want to be Carlton in the AFL, as we all know.
Sorry. I
But yeah,
kind of lost myself for a second there.
it's all good.
No, it's like the Eagles are in a good position. North played a decent game, were able to keep up,
Yeah.
even if it was, like even if there were mistakes across the shop. But I think that they can still kind of not necessarily kind of feel pride in this game because they lost, but also in the fact that like there were good moments, like they were fantastic. I wouldn't say fantastic, but like there were good plays made that were created score. Like that is something to build upon, and like they're working towards trying to get that a little bit more consistently. But there are still so many issues around the ground that they definitely need to work on. But it is very interesting that the Eagles are starting to kind of almost I wouldn't say eclipse them. But they're on.
Nah, you can't say that of one.
No, definitely not. But like they're on the right sort of trajectory to kind of start pushing up against.
You can see where the Eagles are going.
Yeah, exactly right. And we kind of said this in the off season that like whilst we can't see them getting out of bottom four anytime soon, we can see the positive signs that they're on a good trajectory.
Yeah. Like for a 1-win season last year, they definitely could have been a lot worse. Like you can see where they were going. It was a new coach, just doing the things to try and work out what this list was, which was a hot mess when he inherited it. Like Simpson, really good coach, but the list management of West Coast was very lackluster in that period. And now you could see it's like, oh, well, this is where the next list is going to come from. Whereas I said, it's very different from last year where you still got like, oh, we need to play like Rhett Bazzo or a very raw Sandy Brock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's with your best 22 available, so...
But yeah, just like as we kind of already retouched on like the injury front side of things, Harry Edwards is only out with concussion. Thankfully, not a hamstring issue. So he will only miss this week's episode. This week's match at most. Depending on how long they've got between games, he might miss 2. It's a slight variable, but I think he should be fine. And then Griffith Lowe gets out with a thigh injury. It looks like it's not too bad, but it'll probably be a bit of time.
Yeah. So West Coast next game is in 7 days, and then I'm pretty sure it's
that's good.
Fine from that. What is it? It's a 10 or 12 days.
It's 12. It is 12 days.
Yeah, so he'll be fine against Sydney. Assuming that he doesn't have any post-match symptoms, which we obviously hope he doesn't.
This isn't his first concussion, so it could be a slightly longer stint, which is a little concerning. But hopefully he is all right. Because
it is concerning considering his brother, unfortunately, had to leave the league because of concussion issues.
Yes,
so
that is also true.
As I said, Harry Edwards, really promising player. It's just that injury history, scary.
All right. That does actually bring us to the end of round 2. So let's take a look at the fixture for round 3. We'll jump on like the ladder and that sort of stuff. Probably next week's episode. It's probably just a better idea to just try and get a couple games ahead and then look at it, because early on, like, it doesn't change all that drastically.
It's a jumbled mess due to the buys.
Exactly right. The buys just make it such a mess, and we have more of them this week as well. But we're starting at a Thursday night match down in Geelong with the Cats hosting the Crows.
Yeah, so again, this is going to be so interesting because the Cats, 2 very, very different performances, 1 win, 1 loss. Adelaide, 2 similar performances, 1 win, 1 loss. You're not putting you're not saying that either team are high in form. You're saying that both teams have had, a lot to go for. Geelong's had the wood over this Adelaide outfit for the last bit, but Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. Two teams that like the outside a fair bit, not too dominant in the clearances. And, both with fairly fattening forward lines. It's going to be a very interesting one. Obviously, there's a bit of Goomba hometown advantage, but honestly, if you were to just take the two games, you would say Adelaide's the more in form or in a vacuum, in terms of 2026, more likely to win. But yeah, as I said, it's a bit hard. Obviously, Geelong having the bye. Chris Scott famously hates byes. Whether that's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, roll the voodoo dice to be able to tell. But I do think from what I saw against Fremantle, I just think the ease that Fremantle were able to score in that first half was a bit concerning. Like, I think Geelong defensively have just shown nothing. Well, not nothing. As I said, the second half of the Fremantle game was pretty good, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit of a concern. So I just think Adelaide will eventually outmuscle them, but I think this should be a high-scoring, hopefully close affair against two really solid teams.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be very intense, and as neutral supporters, it's a very entertaining game. In terms of a tip, honestly, I don't know who to pick here because, as we've kind of seen, Geelong kind of struggling in the defensive department at the moment. Like, they still have some decent offense, and they've been able to rely on their midfield for a lot of that sort of heavy lifting, at least to get decent inside 50s involved.
At least grunt work meters. Yeah, exactly.
But if Adelaide are able to break through that and really capitalize on their weakened defense line, I could see them taking this out. It's just, the track record of being played down in Geelong is not good for a lot of teams.
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to be interesting whether Adelaide choose to persist to slow the game down. Because again, we've seen Geelong just be they're sort of a run with team where they will happily go into a shooting match with other teams, and Adelaide's not exactly built to where they can't do that. It's not like Geelong will automatically win if that's the case. It's just if Adelaide decide to take a bit of tempo, we know Geelong don't mind hunting intercepts, especially earlier up the ground. So again, it's whether they try and play slow ball, whether they think that was hurting them last week rather than positive. I think the most interesting thing is to see what intent Adelaide comes out with. And as I said, I think Geelong, we all know how Geelong play. There's never really that much difference. I think the biggest difference is how much Geelong try and hunt intercepts, cut off other players' lines. So, as I said, they've got the opportunity to do that against Adelaide, which is why I think this game's nothing much more than a 50-50, but I'm gonna go Adelaide just for believing in their scoring prowess.
Yeah, I think even though everything is kind of leaning towards Geelong for the most part, I think the Crows could genuinely take it. So definitely try and stay tuned for that match, because that's going to be an absolute barn burner.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump down to Friday night's match held at Marvel Stadium. Collingwood get their one Marvel Stadium home game of the year in early, where they host the Giants.
Yeah, and the Giants have really had the one up on Collingwood in recent times, but this is definitely a different Giants outfit. Again, both teams sort of just okay in the centre bounce. I don't think Giants' lack of midfield will concern them, but honestly, it's going to be so interesting because we know Collingwood can do really well off the back half. And we've seen the Giants with some poor entries this year. If Giants are just going to spray it, Collingwood are just going to do the discipline thing, rebound the ball, go into the forward line, and hopefully convert enough. But, as we all know, Collingwood don't exactly have the best forward line themselves. So
no, this is true.
It's going to be a struggle because, as I said, it might be a very cyclical game where, as I said, a forward half or GWS puts the ball inside 50, turns the ball over to Collingwood, who turns the ball over in their inside 50, and it might just go round and round a bit. There's a chance that a really dire game could play out. I do think there's a good chance that this will just be a
decently entertaining defensive matchup. I think I go Collingwood.
Yeah,
I don't think the Giants are like woefully bad.
but they're just not exactly
They're not.
offering enough
Depends on
right
the
now.
ins.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Whereas I think like Collingwood are decent but not potent. Whereas the Giants are impotent but not useless.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, that's definitely one way to put it. Like I don't really know who to lean on or lean towards for this one either. Like I feel like Collingwood is probably the safer bet, but also like the Giants, especially when they match up against Collingwood, are always known to make it competitive and close. So it's with the way these two teams are currently like kind of built, like on top of their injuries, it is very difficult to actually like comfortably choose one for this match. I feel like, but I think
it's
I'm going to go
definitely
Collingwood.
a team sheet matchup dependent too. Because remember, like we're talking about swings of like Daniels, Darcy Moore, coming back into the side. Because remember, like the Giants still have free tall defenders that you're going to have to defend at some point.
Yes,
like
that's
even
right.
with them all back, it does take away Collingwood's ability to intercept on the rebound. So that's what I'm saying. It's like I'll probably take Collingwood, but like the Giants, you got to keep an eye on them. It could be where they pull out another good game like they do against Hawthorn, but it requires offensive efficiency, and that's just what I don't believe in the Giants at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if they reliably have that right now either. But let's jump over to our Saturday matches, starting with the first one over at Marvel Stadium. It's St Kilda hosting the Brisbane Lions.
Dang. Sorry, I just read the time. 9:35 start for Australian Western Standard Time. Starts at what?
This is an early game.
11.
Which is
it's
like really early game.
Yeah. If you're a St Kilda fan, don't go partying too much the night before, or it would be hard to get up for it. But as I said, a very interesting matchup. Lions, 0 wins, going into the bye with not as little form as you can get, but very disappointing form. You know that you're going to miss Harris Andrews for another week. You get some of your defenders back. And St Kilda, you know you're playing good footy. You probably know you're not playing the best footy. But you have some belief that you could take on the Lions. You know, maybe, you got to believe that, as I said, they're like, they're an own-two side. You pretend in your mind that they're more vulnerable than they actually are. And, you try and back yourself in. So it'll be a very interesting contest. Again, I think Cal Wilkie, that matchup against, what's his name? Will
Logan
be very,
Morris?
not Logan Morris.
No, sorry. Oscar Allen?
No, Logan Morris. I don't think he'll be on Oscar.
You don't think so?
I think they'll probably give that to I think he'll probably go to a Leicester type.
Probably end up taking
Gardner.
Yeah, Gardner's back, so it could take the Gardner.
No, we're putting the Brisbane defenders on Brisbane forward lines, Blazy. What are we doing?
I thought we were talking about
that's on me.
Like Wilkie going on them.
No.
Oh no, no, you're right.
Then I said Leicester.
Oh my god, we just went around in circles. That's crazy. No. Okay, actually,
that is true. Actually, because I'll have to make a decision if Kamanides not back.
Kamanides out with that injury. They don't really have much of a massively dangerous forward line. Like they've got.
They might.
Like Sharman can have impact. If Taru is still playing forward, he can have an impact because he's tall and he's big bodied. It'll be depend. I don't think TDK could have an impact up forward, but that's a very big question mark right now. Like Sharman's kind of like their only like big kind of target left if Kamanides out. I mean, you got Naz who can float up there as well, but it's like, how often is he going to actually be able to push into the forward line, or if he's going to like mostly kind of float midfield wise? Like, there's a lot of question marks in that regard. But again, you look at Brisbane, and it's like, where do you actually belong? Because what you've shown us so far is not good.
Oh, they were good against the Bulldogs. I'm not going to knock them too much on that performance. But yeah, Sydney was just an atrocious effort for a team that really could have shown a bit more grunt, backs against the wall. But yeah, as I said, in terms of the forward line, what I meant to say is that I think Silvani will take Oscar Allen. I think you're going to put while he's not threatening, you got to put your second defender on him until he's shown a bit, because again, Brisbane are running the forward line through Logan Morris. So, as I said, honestly, I think Wilkie does the best job when you put him to the ball winner, because as I said, he plays tight and he finds the intercept. So I think that will be the case. But yeah, as I said, like
I still don't know if I'm going to
do think St Kilda. Yeah, they have to have a real big effort in the inside midfield, because that's the biggest thing. It's like St Kilda are still not like a grit and grind, really good midfielder team. They haven't really faced that many strong midfield units.
No, not really.
They faced Melbourne, who's finding themselves. They faced Collingwood, who are okay, but not like a real bully midfield.
Yeah.
This is going to be their first test up against a all-in elite midfield. So
yeah, this is going to be the hardest.
Again, I don't think St Kilda. Yeah, I don't think St Kilda do well against those sort of teams. I think the Lions will get onto the page, but I think for St Kilda, it's like proving to themselves that their style of football can make up for other areas. And if they can show a few signs in this match, I don't think it will be all for naught. But yeah, as I said, it would put them in a 1 of 3 space. Not the way they wanted to start the year. But who knows? I can definitely see them winning.
Oh,
I just don't think it's very likely.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, there's a possibility, but it's an unlikely possibility. All right, let's jump over to the next match. And we're jumping back over to WA, where Fremantle is hosting Richmond. And like, I'll be honest, this one's kind of self-explanatory. Like, Fremantle are probably going to be the very obvious pick here. All I want out of us is to just try and play a competitive game. Like, I don't know what we're going to do in the ruck situation. I don't know what we're going to do about the Lynch situation. But if we're able to at least like make it somewhat competitive, especially in that midfield, then I think I'll be kind of happy with whatever other performance we kind of throw out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so hard. Like, as I said, like, what was I going to say? Did they face Melbourne got spanked in the midfield when they even had just enough talent to put a defensive tag on one of their players.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's like, Richmond don't have that. They don't have that forward line talent to convert too many opportunities. So again, it will be Richmond just trying to get their hands on the ball. Maybe because we saw the Dockers intercept a few. I think that we're seeing that a bit. Like, the Dockers have been good, but they go through periods of really bad ball use. Like, we saw that in the last quarters against Geelong. We saw that in the first quarter against Melbourne before they cleaned up a bit. So that's what I want to see for Richmond. I want to see if the Dockers kicking goes below a bit. I want to see Richmond pounce. And that maybe not be direct goals, but at least get the ball deep inside their forward 50. And, you just go from there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree on that. Like, again, in terms of tipping Freo, it's a safe tip. Go with Freo 100%.
Yeah.
That's just a given at this point. But yeah, if we're able to at least get some consistent inside 50s, if we're able to like have that fight back against Freo's really strong midfield, I can be happy with whatever kind of performance we throw out there. Jumping over now to a match that is probably going to be played out very similarly. But then again, like it could also be a very, very close and intense match. Because frankly, who kind of really knows with these two teams right now? It's Essendon and North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, like as bad as North were against the Eagles, and I won't even say bad. I think they were disappointing. Like, I don't want to like discredit the Eagles.
It was a high-scoring game. Like there was some decent effort put in, but yeah, it was just disappointing how.
Yeah, it's not like North were witches' hat. They were just disappointing due to the context.
Yeah,
Whereas Essendon were just flat out disappointing.
just in general.
Yeah. So, yeah, like as I said, if you're tipping Essendon, you're a very brave soul at the moment. But, as I said, North aren't exactly efficient. And I think if Essendon are to patch up their backline, which has been a bit out of sorts, like this would be the match to do it.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, again, you're looking to like really get a few intercepts, make sure you're accountable from stoppage, and then you should naturally get a few turnovers, which might open up a bit. But they're still like got to be like not getting absolutely spanked in the stoppages. And as I said, I think if you just don't defensively run against North Melbourne, we saw Port not run against North Melbourne. They got absolutely spanked, and I think this would be the case for Essendon if they even show a mediocre. If they show another mediocre performance like they did last week.
Yeah, that's kind of like where I'm kind of expecting this kind of match to like really go. Is that like I want to see something competitive from Essendon, but I'm kind of expecting North to like actually really learn from the mistakes against the Eagles, and like actually kind of implement them against a team who's basically kind of sitting in the same position.
Yeah, well, I mean, even probably lower. Like, yeah, so then you would hope that there's separation between North and Essendon. That's again,
Yes,
you get to coach firing stages if North and Essendon are in close to the same league this year.
Yeah.
So you do got to like trust North to have a bit of thing, but as I said, it's going to be interesting to see how this game plays out, and it's going to be.
There's potential to put a little bit of faith in North this week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you would tip Essendon. It's just like I don't exactly trust North, but as I said, this is a game where as I said, you don't worry too much about KO having rights to Saturday night football.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
At least this isn't another Friday night prime time for Essendon. Like that's not a
this is two fan bases with not that much optimism. It's just again, North is just the disappointment in one game, and they've got to make it up to them. It's up to them to make that a one game error for the season.
Yeah, that's right. All right, jumping over to our Sunday matches now, and over at the Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide hosts the West Coast Eagles. But before we just do run through like what our thoughts on this matchup, we have I got news of the Rising Star, and it is Joe Shanahan who won the Rising Star nomination.
Joe Shanahan's able. I didn't actually know he was still eligible because I know he was a
Nope. Pick 30 in the 2024 draft. But only debuted round 16 last year.
Yeah. So, congratulations. I'm big on Joe Shanahan. I think he's showed a lot.
I think he's offered a lot so far to this Eagles lineup, and like he's only
for a young forward. He's athletic, decent mark, and it's just like I know Waterman sort of plays as a third tall, but like Joe Shanahan, again, Waterman's a wide third tall. Maybe you call him a second tall. Depends on your definitions. Whereas Joe Shanahan will stretch the ground up, which I think is very important because, as I said, that just adds depth. Say what you will about the maturity of the Eagles forward line. They have a lot of structural variety in terms of their forward line. They just don't capitalize it because it's the Eagles. Expected.
Yes. But yeah, he finished the game with 14 disposals, 8 marks, and 2 goals. 86% game time. So yeah, absolutely well earned by him.
Yeah, there was a few Eagles that could have won it. I mean, Duff Tytler had a fantastic game. Even the number 1 pick, you'd probably expect him to get another nomination later on a better performance, but Willem Dersma, absolutely fantastic. And I did have a thought on the weekend because I saw him take a pretty good mark. If he has a screamer, like, a really good pack mark, I think we got to work out as like the media when to use the headline, the Willem Screamer, like the Willem Scream. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you
Like
mean.
that's gonna be saved for a very special mark.
That's
So,
gotta be
like,
worked in somehow. I agree.
there needs to be a media like conference. They're gonna be like, okay, we got to be different because if they do it on like a okay-ish pack mark, you can't really use it again. You know what I mean? So we got to decide. Like he needs to take a really good specky, and we need to use that headline.
Yeah, I agree.
But in terms of this game, really interesting contest. This is a real good litmus test for the Eagles where, yeah, it's a step up in opponents, but it's not that out the realms, them at least doing well.
Yeah.
You don't want them to get ahead of themselves. We know what happens when Port get too much of the football. They are very good with space and time in hand, but they're not that great defensively. Even against Essendon, there were a few poor defensive moments, especially in that first couple of chains.
Mm-hmm.
Still missed a few tackles. It is what it is. So yeah, for the Eagles, it's really about keeping that ball movement, because I think that will trouble Port, because Port are a team you can also bait with handballs. They will flood to the ball carrier occasionally, so that might be a way they burn them. Whereas for Port, they've really got to rely on the fundamentals, the teeth and nails, keeping their midfield performance strong, running both ways, being defensively accountable, which, again, last week they did. And, relying on a player like Mitch Georgiadis, George Lukosius, to sort of expose a Eagles defense that are probably without Harry Edwards.
Yeah, it's like the matchups going into this, like it without Harry Edwards, it does make their backline a lot more vulnerable. Tyler Young will probably have to step up a little bit more in terms of being able to have a more prominent impact against these two tools. But the fact that Georgiadis has kind of developed into such a really powerful forward already will make this like such a tough battle in those areas. And then you look at the midfield, and like, I'll be honest, it's kind of just all over the place, that midfield. Like both sides, it's gonna be it's gonna be a mess. So you can't really kind of pick it from that angle, especially if with Rose out, like that makes it harder for Port. Even though Port do, you still have Butters, you've still got a bunch of other players. I'm blanking on names right now, but I know you can probably fill them in.
Willem Drew, Horn Francis. We might get Wines back. I think he was suspended. He is back next round. Yeah. That suspension finishes up, so he'll be available to play.
So you'll have some decent. You'll have some decent midfield options to match up against your Duff Tytlers, your Dersma, your Harley Reid, your Elliot Yeo, and whoever else is in that midfield.
Duff Tytler's a forward.
Oh, yeah, he's a forward. Sorry, but you know what I mean.
Forward.
Like,
yeah.
So it'll be interesting. I definitely think this will be a lot more interesting than people think. Could it be a blowout?
Yeah. Honestly, yeah.
If Port bring
Port's
their A
outside,
game,
look,
maybe.
Yeah. Like Port's outside midfield hasn't fired a shot. Like Jace Burgoyne's been mediocre, I would say. Jacob Ware's had very limited impact. Joe Richards has been by far the brightest spark, but he's a lot more forward of the ball. So, as I said, Dev Robertson might have a good day out, like we saw, as he mentioned. Willem Dersma, if we're not good in the wings, he could definitely have an impact. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of ways that the Eagles could follow up on this. I won't say it's out of the question. I do think Port just have a conventional win, but I don't think this will be a blowout. I have a bit of faith in the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think the only way it could be a blowout is if Port really step up and really actually build upon the match that they just had. Essentially, they really not granted. Personnel wise, it'd probably be it's going to be very difficult. But if they're able to kind of play the way that we know that they can play, where they're able to kind of create a lot of organized chaos and convert that into clean inside 50s to Georgiadis, to Lukosius, if Lukosius has his kicking boots on, actually have an impact on that scoreboard. It is entirely possible. But I think the Eagles have come a long way already, where I think they can make it a closer match. I'm not entirely certain in a win as of yet, though.
Yeah, as I said, you don't want to get too far ahead after one win against, again, a team
Again.
that Eagles have matched up well against in the past, and
Yeah,
B,
that's right.
hasn't exactly been a historical powerhouse. So
Very true. Very
again,
true.
it's all about taking good lessons from one week, positive reinforcement from one week into tangible improvements the next. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a win, but for the Eagles' sake, it will be a huge step forward if they're able to compete, especially away from home. Because as I said, I don't think there's too many people that think that West Coast is going to win away from home this year.
Yeah, no, I think that if they're going to get any more wins, it'll likely be at Optus. But let's jump down to our last match of the round, Carlton and Melbourne at the MCG. This one, with how Carlton has kind of restructured their forward line and slightly reconfigured their midfield, there's a definite chance that they could make this a really, really close game, especially with Melbourne missing Disco Turner. Obviously, no more Stephen May, so there's just Jake Lever kind of running the back line at the moment. Whilst they have their back line not too bad realistically. There are definitely holes kind of across the board from both these teams at the moment, but I genuinely think that Carlton could have a lot bigger of an impact than we're kind of expecting.
I don't know. I actually am going a bit towards Melbourne, like I said. Both teams have been disappointing.
In terms of tipping, I'm probably going to go Melbourne, but I think that Carlton can actually make this game a lot more interesting than we might be expecting.
Okay. No, I would have thought that Carlton may even be favourites this game. I don't know. I don't really look at the odds, but yeah, no, I definitely think that Melbourne have shown more this season. Again, Carlton beating Richmond. Richmond probably had rights to win that game. You can't really be looking at them too strongly. Melbourne, again, even against the Dockers, had some nice bits of movement. Definitely, probably again showing signs of at least having periods of being good. Again, I don't think they'll have long-term success this year, but I do think they'll have little patches of momentum. I think there might be a 6 to 7 win team by the looks of things so far. So yeah, Melbourne again, solid enough midfield. Backline is the real issue. As I said, Carlton can move the ball forward, so they've really got to stop enough conventional attack, make the most of the turnovers, and sort of do what they did against St Kilda and just make the most of the opportunities that are presented to them. Because again, Carlton just make a lot of those opportunities. Not the cleanest team in the world. But yeah, as I said, for Carlton, yeah, they have the ability to outmuscle Melbourne. Melbourne's midfield is just, again, more has right ideas and overwhelming strength. Carlton definitely have a much easier time winning the ball than Melbourne do. Just in any given contest. So
yeah,
again, it might be a mid-ridge versus efficiency game. I'm leaning towards Melbourne, but Carlton aren't no chance. I just don't have that much faith in Carlton from what I've seen.
No, neither do I. But I think that they can offer, offer this game something that at least makes it somewhat close, because both teams are in a very similar kind of area in terms of their skill sets and personnel. But I think the way that Melbourne have kind of developed restructured their list under Stephen King in the off season. And just kind of reconfigured their forward line a bit better. I think they will probably end up edging it out anyway, realistically.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
All right, I think that.
And then just the buys.
Yeah, the buys. I forgot about the buys. So the Gold Coast Suns, the Western Bulldogs, Hawthorn, and Sydney have the buys for this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a shame not seeing the Dogs and the Suns.
I know, two best teams in the comp, and they get a week off.
Yeah. The undefeated teams will be protected. Is there another undefeated team?
They should be pretty much protected. And then, to be fair, the Dogs, a little bit of spoilers into the week after, but the Dogs are walking into a game against Essendon, when they come back. so they're
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
safe.
Well, they need a week to prepare for
Yeah,
that
the Dogs
one.
are walking into Essendon, and the Suns are walking to Melbourne. So
Yeah. In fact, that's interesting. The top 4 teams of the ladder all have a bye this week.
that is very interesting.
The top of the ladder is Suns, Bulldogs, Swans, Hawthorn.
That is actually very interesting. Who knew? I was not paying attention to that ladder.
So everyone else is either at 1 or 0 wins.
There you go. There you go. But yeah, that does actually bring us to the end of this episode. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out with us this week. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. I apologize if there were periods in this episode where I was maybe a little too quiet or my eyes were closed. I did not actually sleep before this recording. I thought I had enough energy to power through. I did not. I regret it. But we got through it, so we're okay. We made it work. Yeah, so next week's episode will be, obviously recapping round 2, previewing round 3, bringing you any sort of news from the AFL atmosphere, AFL World Sphere, News Sphere, whatever the heck you want to call it, throughout the week. One thing I do actually want to bring up just before we sign off is a big congratulations to the Tassie Devils for their first VFL win of the season up against Coburg. Apparently they had a fantastic game. Granted, I know it's only the VFL, but still the fact that, Tassie's finally in and, they actually already have a win under their belts. It's fantastic.
It's better than losing.
Absolutely. But yeah, so it's very exciting to see how they progress in the VFL season. I am expecting them to probably make finals, considering the VFL is 20 teams and we do have a wildcard round.
In VFL, yeah.
I expect them to make it in, right off the bat, which would be really good for the construction of
confidence,
fan base, build the confidence in yourself as the club, and just as long as they're able to really kind of build some solid momentum over the next couple of years, I think once Tassie is actually into the AFL itself, I think that'll make such a huge difference in terms of attracting players and things of that nature.
Exactly, because it is a tough ask, because obviously they can't build up that crowd in where they want to be playing Tasmania. If they can get a bit of excitement in the VFL, they might even pick up a few fans in Melbourne because of it. Or Victoria, I should say. So,
exactly right.
Yeah, good signs there.
But yeah, that pretty much does it for us. Thank you all so much. There isn't too much. I don't think there is really too much for us going on this week. Just work or whatever you do with your week. I can't.
Whatever I do in a week, I don't know myself.
Well, there you go. We love winging it a little bit, don't we?
Yeah.
But yes, thank you all so much, and we will see you all next week. So until then, take care.